Otaku in the Marvel DC Universe. Welcome back, brave explorers of impossible worlds. We are excited to have you here to continue this odyssey together. Before we continue, everything you'll hear is pure fiction, so please don't try to replicate combat techniques at home. This wonderful story and all its rights belong to its brilliant original author. We are only the messengers of entertainment. Want another dose of adventure? Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single chapter, and if you can't wait, our Patreon has exclusive surprises you'll love. Chapter 101 Imperial History. About half an hour later, Liang Yue single-handedly broke into the Imperial City facing this rebel who had been wreaking havoc in the capital for days, wantonly killing meritorious officials and loyal subjects of the court, as well as heroes of his clan, and who is now said to have ambushed and killed Iobai, the Manchurian first warrior of our dynasty. In the street the sons of noble families who were serving as imperial guardsmen wilted after only a few attempts to resist, especially after Liang Yue used an RPG to blast open the gates of the imperial city. The psychological resistance of these soldiers almost immediately dropped to its lowest point. Their faces filled with panic as they fled towards the interior of the imperial city. Liang Yue followed them slowly. However, when he had walked less than halfway across the large square in front of the Qian King Palace, the young Kangxi Emperor, surrounded by a group of officials and numerous guards, took the initiative to come out to meet him. It must be said that this little emperor with a face full of pockmarks, who was able to achieve such remarkable achievements in history, did indeed have his own extraordinary qualities. At the young age of 12 or 13, he was able to muster the courage to negotiate with Liang Yue, this dangerous figure, in front of the palace. Although his speech was a little trembling, he did indeed have his own sense of responsibility and ability, and it seemed that the education he received from an early age was indeed very different from that of ordinary people in this era. Overtly and covertly, he even wanted to recruit me. Liang Yue naturally didn't want to waste time with him and directly interrupted the little emperor's words of persuasion. Don't waste your breath. I advise you to take your clansmen and return to your Shenjing as soon as possible, lest I have to create another bloodbath in the future. Bold. You faced with Liang Yue's unreasonable behavior, a young, sword-bearing attendant beside the little emperor suddenly stood up to show his loyalty, but just as he began to speak, everyone heard a muffled paw sound, and the little eunuch's head was directly blown apart by Liang Yue from a distance amidst the splashing blood. The guards and ministers on the opposite side immediately fell into chaos. Several loyal guards then raised thick shields to protect the somewhat frightened little emperor behind them. For a time, various cries of "Protect the emperor," and "Capture him for me," emerged frequently from the crowd. But no one dared to step forward. Even the imperial guardsmen who were drawing their bows and arrows dared not release them at this time, but only protected the courtiers and the little emperor behind them, slowly retreating. Seeing this, Liang Yue waved to the group of rulers and ministers who seemed to have been by him, and shouted loudly, "Someone come and take me to the Imperial Archives." The Imperial Archives, also known as the, in modern terms, is the National Archives of the Ming and Qing dynasties. Well, in fact, it is more accurate to say that it is the National Archives of the Ming dynasty. Now, after all, the Qing dynasty of the Tartars had only been established for a short time at this time, and there were not many archives to speak of. Later, when the Qianlong Emperor ruled, a book-compiling movement almost destroyed the books in that museum. Of course, to be fair, the Kangxi and Yongzhang dynasties were not bad. At least they didn't do things so absolutely. Liang Yue's purpose in coming to the Imperial Archives at this time was also very simple, that is, to borrow books from this National Archives. However, the deadline is unlimited. Creak. A soft sound pushing open the heavy door. Liang Yue slowly walked into it. A little eunuch behind him was holding an oil lamp at this time, walking in tremblingly, but was then waved away by him. At this time, the entire building was somewhat dim, with only a few scattered lights around, and the air was filled with a strong fragrance of books. Everywhere he looked, the room was very clean, and rows of bookshelves were neatly filled with various books. Obviously, the eunuchs responsible for cleaning here had done a good job compared with this national-scale archive hall in front of him. The three-story Sutra Pavilion and Shaolin Temple was undoubtedly a bit petty. Liang Yue was holding a torch at this time, slowly wandering among the tall bookshelves, his eyes wide open, browsing the books on both sides like a fleeting glance. As he walked, he couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Commentary on the Water Classic, Essential Techniques for the Welfare of the People, The Art of War, Yellow Court Scripture." This is Yongle Encyclopedia. So many? Could it be the complete version? That would be more than 10,000 volumes. Taiping Yuan, Yuan Liju, Sifu Yuangui Imperial Sun's Art of the Bedchamber. Tis, there's even this kind of thing. Jian Alchemy Secret Record, the Taoist Alchemy? I haven't heard of it before. Tajiquan scripture him. It seems that the real content is finally starting. Turtle breathing technique, iron shirt, stone crushing kick, 5 elements fist, Hang Shan sword play. It's a pity that none of them are complete secret manuals. Tazu long fist, flying leaf sword technique, Hun Yuan Gong 13 Tabeo horizontal training golden bell cover, iron wire fist, eagle claw technique, esoteric right hand prince stepping across the river on a reed. This Shaolin stunt is also here? I wonder if the original version of the golden bell cover can be found here. It doesn't have to be too complete, as long as it's a little more complete than the Shaolin Temple's version. In the following time, Liang Yue began to immerse himself in the vast sea of books in front of him. What he focused on was naturally the martial arts classics. That could enhance his strength. However, compared to other categories of books, martial arts classics actually accounted for only a small part of this imperial archives. About 100 or so. Most of them are severely incomplete versions, and I don't know whether this is due to the Qing court's improper preservation, or whether this world in the dark does not allow the existence of 2 advanced martial arts techniques. Anyway, after searching back and forth, the most advanced technique that Liang Yue could find here was Hun Yuan Gong. As the saying goes, among the 9 arts of Mount Hui, the purple haze is the first. This Hun Yuan Gong is naturally not a legendary purple haze divine art that only the head of Mount Hui is qualified to practice, but it also belongs to the 9 arts as purple haze. It is a genuine Taoist cultivation method, and it is also the internal cultivation method that Liang Yue currently needs most. Although this still made him a little unwilling because of his insatiable greed, it was enough for the time being. In addition, in this royal archives, there were not many internal martial arts that Liang Yue could look up to. The Sunflower Manual, which is said to be only practiced by the special profession of eunuchs, was nowhere to be found. However, another relatively well-known Qing dynasty secret technique, Bone Melting Palm, was found by Liang Yue on the bookshelf. In addition to these limited 100 or so martial arts secrets, various classics of the classics, history, philosophy, and literature, as well as records of gods and monsters, are the mainstream collections in this imperial archives, accounting for the vast majority of the collection. Among these, what Liang Yue valued most was naturally the complete version of the Yongle Encyclopedia, and the Southern Song Dynasty version of the Daozan collection. Chapter 102 Storms gather in Beeping City. Before they knew it, half a day had passed. During this time, Liang Yue had been wandering within the Imperial History Office, quietly browsing the books stored here. At this moment, he was fully immersed in it, and time was quietly passing by him. It wasn't until a knock on the door rang out abruptly, breaking the silence here. Subsequently, a Qing dynasty palace maid pushed the door open, carrying a food box in her hand, and then slowly and methodically placed several exquisite dishes on the nearby table. This woman was not very old, probably only 2 or 3 years older than the little emperor, but there was already a sense of grace between her eyebrows. She wasn't particularly stunning in appearance, but there seemed to be a kind of magic about her that could create an illusion of wanting to be quiet when looking at her Taoist priest. It's time to eat. After placing all the food, the woman stood aside with her hands clasped together, looking at someone not far away with a smile on her face. Her red lips parted slightly, and her voice was as beautiful as a clear spring in the mountains, making people reluctant to leave. Liang Yue's expression suddenly froze when he heard this, but then the corners of his mouth unconsciously curved up. He gently put the secret book in his hand back in its original place, and then pressed his palm on the tall solid wood bookshelf in front of him. His eyes sweeping over the vast collection of books with a thought, the bookshelf and piles of books in front of him were taken into the stronghold world. Go back and tell Kangxi that they have 2 days to pack their bags, then gather their troops and get out of the capital. 2 days later, I will start attacking the city. If you dare to plunder the people along the way, I will chase you all the way to the so-called Shengjing and slaughter you all. After saying this, Liang Yue ignored the woman's surprised and shocked face, and took one bookshelf after another, taking away the centuries of book collections from the Imperial History Office. After a while, this vast place of book collection became empty. I mean what I say. Afterwards, Liang Yue, in front of the other party, took an iron pickaxe and knocked and beat on the floor, repaired and patched it, and then disappeared into the ground. Soon, not long after Liang Yue escaped into the ground, the woman brought the news back to the dignitaries and the little emperor in the imperial city. After the failure of the surrender, the Tartars were immediately thrown into chaos. Liang Yue didn't know how they discussed and weighed the situation afterwards, but since then, the Qing court's troops began to mobilize more and more frequently. One after another, messengers or homing pigeons carrying messages were scattered in large numbers outside the city, The 10,000-strong banner army that had returned with Aobai was immediately transferred into Beeping City after Liang Yue's slaughter. The number of this team had been reduced to less than 6,000. But their return had stabilized the Qing court's mentality to a certain extent. When the time came to the morning of the second day, Beeping City was officially plunged into chaos. The granaries located throughout the capital became the focus of the Qing court's troops. A large amount of stored grain was taken out of the warehouses and transported out of the city gates, embarking on the road back north in advance. In addition, boxes of gold and silver were also transported out of the imperial city, along with the grain and grass, and continuously transported out of the city. But at this time, the Tartars' troops in the capital were actually very limited. They were also uneasy about the Han Chinese Green Standard Army, whose eyes were now becoming more and more fierce and meaningful as they looked at them. As for the conscription of civilians, Liang Yue was watching them closely. After he shot and killed a banner army that was forcibly conscripting young men to transport grain, gold, and silver, this kind of thing never happened again. As for the Manchu children, soldiers' families, etc., living in the capital, they were probably unable to move their own belongings, and the various materials that could be transported were ultimately limited. The losses along the way were estimated to be ultimately dependent on the grain and grass transported by the banner army. 2 days later, Liang Yue was standing on the tall city wall of Beeping City, looking at the group of people who were drooping their heads and slowly moving away with a sense of frustration, feeling unspeakably relaxed in his heart. Beside him, the long unseen father and son Ji, the old abbot of Shaolin Temple, and Shen Jinan, the legendary leader of the Heaven and Earth Society who was more famous than he had met, were now impressively in the ranks. In addition, Hong Ziguan's companion, the Red Bean Girl, and her mother, Zhu Xiaoqian, a group of martial monks from Shaolin Temple, a group of Hall Master members from the Heaven and Earth Society, and the vanguard representatives of various rebel armies had also come to the capital. During the turmoil of these days, everyone was now with Liang Yue, facing the morning sun in winter, looking at the group that was moving away, with different expressions on their faces. Just let them leave like this. Hong Ziguan seemed unwilling at this time, holding his fatal throat-locking spear, staring at the backs of those people, and said, "I've killed enough people, and I don't want to be stained with too much blood for the time being. Besides, it's good to leave an enemy in the north for myself. It can remind the people of China to be self-reliant and prevent enemies from further north." Speaking of this, Liang Yue couldn't help but think of the treaty in history that made people laugh and cry when they looked at it. It was said that they were fighting against the northern Maozi invaders, and one then Kangxi took the initiative to send the other party a large piece of land, and also called it both kindness and power. This is really not taking his own territory seriously. Now that I've driven you back to your Shengjing, in another 10 years or so, it is estimated that the Maozi will run over to attack. Then we'll see what you do then. I don't know. What are Taoist priest Liang's next plans? At this time, the Tartars are retreating to the north, and the banner troops distributed in various places are also in low spirits and have been repeatedly defeated and annihilated. Wu Sangui, Shang Kexi, and others have also taken advantage of the situation to rise up. It is foreseeable that the land of China will be in a civil war for a long time to come, Alice, Chen Jinan said with a solemn expression. At this time, to a certain extent, representing the Zhang family in Taiwan and the Mu family in Yunnan. His perspective on looking at problems is broader than that of ordinary people in the pugilistic world, but he still cannot escape the shackles of the pattern. Next, I will go to Shaanxi to settle those rebellious people, and then I will go north for a turn. Shaanxi? Is Taoist priest Liang referring to the 8 great royal merchants? The matter of stabilizing the capital will be left to the chief Chen. I want to go with Taoist priest Liang. Hero Hong should stay in the capital. After all, you still have a wife and children to take care of, and although the Qing court's troops have retreated, there must be no less assassinations in the dark. I am a little worried about the safety of Chief Chen. Is all right. This old monk can't wait to go with Taoist priest Liang. Chapter 103. Back to reality. With a flash of light, the scene before him distorted briefly, and Liang Yue returned to the confines of the stronghold world's walls. Compared to when he first entered the new Shaolin 5 Ancestors world, the interior of the walls was now almost entirely filled with various supplies. The spoils plundered from the Imperial History Museum and the various powerful families of the Qing court alone occupied most of the area. The remaining gold, silver, jewelry, antiques, calligraphy, jade, stone carvings, precious medicinal materials, and other items occupied another part of the space. Fortunately, I chose this rocky mountain as a warehouse when I left. Otherwise a rainstorm would have ruined all the books here. Reaching out to touch the rows of bookshelves filled with various books, Liang Yue nodded in satisfaction after confirming that his collections were dry and intact. By the way, system, does the infinite shelf life attribute in this McWorld also apply to my plundered spoils, Ling? As long as the items themselves are well preserved, with no signs of damage or human-caused destruction, the Stronghold World's rules can guarantee their integrity. That's good. It seems I need to build a place myself, specifically for storing these books, calligraphy, and spoils. How about building a private library? Unconsciously stroking his chin, Liang Yue's thoughts drifted away after receiving the system's affirmative answer previously, when he was still in the new Shaolin 5 Ancestors world and had completed the animal chapter of the Stronghold World's upgrade mission, besides receiving an extra lottery opportunity and the small surprise reward from the ecological chain's micro-end, as the system called it, as an implicit reward for the increased integration with the Stronghold World. Liang Yue's mastery of the McWorld before him had also improved significantly in subtle ways. This increased mastery was mainly reflected in the precision with which he could collect and use various resources. For example, Liang Yue could previously only use the McWorld's map to assist him in roughly locating areas within the Stronghold World, whether it was the storage and retrieval of animals, plants, or various plundered items. There was always a certain degree of error. In addition, Liang Yue was unable to collect or use items within covered areas. Even with a map's assistance, this situation manifested as Liang Yue being unable to manipulate items inside a house or cave within the Stronghold World. But now, this situation had improved. At the very least, Liang Yue could now relatively freely take a book directly from the bookshelf in the Stronghold World to read. System, show me the rewards for this mission. Sitting back in the Grandmaster's chair, Liang Yue comfortably groaned and subconsciously looked up at the starry sky where the moon was already overhead, then requested the system ding. After detection, in this main quest hunting twin court hounds, the host completed the task with a number exceeding the mission target multiple times, meeting the reward upgrade conditions. Therefore, the mission reward given by the system is the mission points multiplied by 8. In addition, in this lottery privilege, the host can add a keyword to influence the selection range of the prizes ding. After detection, in the side quest Twisted Plotline, the host successfully protected the chief of the Heaven and Earth Society, Chen Jinin's personal safety during the mission period, achieving the mission objective. Therefore, you will receive 500 mission points and an identity setting scroll. It didn't achieve the tenfold mission point reward like the previous Apocalypse world. How do I feel that I've eliminated enough Queen Court hounds in the past 6 months? Hearing this, a suspicious look flashed across Liang Yue's face, and then he unconsciously began to calculate with his fingers. After successfully driving the Queen Court's group of people back to the so-called Shengjing, Liang Yue did not give up hunting down those Han traders and lackeys in the remaining half of his training time. In fact, after retreating to the north, the young emperor and a group of 8 banner nobles, unwilling as they were, did indeed send many hounds under their command, as he had previously thought, to spy on information within China when necessary. They would even take on the responsibility of assassinating certain important figures as a group of people who had truly tasted the pinnacle of power and sat in that position, after falling headlong from the lofty Chinese capital and retreating all the way back to the so-called secondary capital, which could only be considered a small city compared to Beeping. These Tartar nobles had been plotting the day they would re-enter the Central Plains. To this end, the Queen Court, from top to bottom, could be said to be striving for self-improvement, preparing everywhere, forming alliances, and constantly wooing surrounding forces. The reason for this was simply because the gap between the two places was too great. The huge difference between the capital and Shengjing was unbearable for anyone. However, the Manchus were not a large ethnic group in this period. According to their own records, when they entered the pass, the total population of the Manchus was only 340,000, including about 40,000 Manchu 8 banners, which also included many other ethnic minorities under their command. After more than 20 years of reproduction and living in various parts of China, the population had at most doubled, roughly 700,000 to 800,000. Among these people, those who could successfully escape the pursuit and liquidation by uprising armies and folk heroes in various places, and escape back to their ancestral homeland outside the pass, would be remarkable if there were 10,000 of them. In addition, those who were driven away from the capital by Liang Yue and returned to the Shengjing area with the young emperor and others, adding up all the odds and ends, it would be lucky if the total population was 500,000. Honestly, with so few people, how many troops could they form? Could they have 100,000, returning to that cold northeast region? They, who were not good at farming, could support how many people, after the Chinese land returned to war? Uprising armies and warlord forces in various places, in order to compete for the world, would inevitably set off boundless conquests with the Tartars' natural vigilance against the warlords and uprising armies in various places. Once they were driven back to the northeast, they would never want to come back. Liang Yue never doubted whether this situation would occur. The fact was just as this guy had expected. In the half-year before he officially left the new Shaolin 5 Ancestors world, Shanhai Pass was reoccupied. Chen Jinan, Hong Ziguan, and others, who were unwilling to get involved in civil wars and conquests, personally organized a group of troops to garrison it while defending against the Manchus from re-entering the pass. They also constantly intercepted and killed the Tartar remnants who were fleeing from all parts of the Central Plains to outside the pass. After hearing the news, the warlords in various places also tacitly supported them with a lot of food and materials during this period. This guy even recruited a group of craftsmen with his reputation, and taught them the skills to build more advanced firearms based on the principles and concepts of modern firearms. Under Liang Yue's cramming, various grenades, guns, landmines, cannons, and even steam engines were launched and put online on the Chinese land of the new Shaolin 5 Ancestors world. Within a few short months before officially leaving this world, Liang Yue had just led that group of craftsmen to build a warship made of pure metal material. Compared to the warships of later generations, this warship was undoubtedly very crude, but it also made many people understand a truth, that is, metal materials, as long as conditions permit, can also float on the water. Chapter 104 Everlasting Snow. 8,864, plus 500 is 6,009, plus the 2,000 plus points I had left before, then I now have more than 9,000 points, not yet 10,000. Not enough. System, I want to draw a lottery. Ling. Please provide keywords for this lottery draw to assist and limit the scope of prize selection. Keywords. If it's cultivation techniques, I don't need them for the time being. Mixed yuan skill is enough for me to cultivate for a while, at least until the next trial world opens, or even ends. It would be difficult for me to cultivate this skill to the highest level. As for switching to another skill, I won't consider it for the time being. Mixed yuan skill is actually not bad in terms of techniques for fighting enemies. I haven't enjoyed techniques for unarmed combat. If I have time, I can also study the Taizu long fist, shattering stone kick, etc. As for swordsmanship, I'll practice the Mount Heng sword play for now. For lightness skills, I have crossing the river on a reed. This Shaolin masterpiece of lightness skill seems to be even better than mixed yuan skill, and it's already enough for me to practice. As for body refining techniques, the third level of Golden Bell Shield is already the limit, and there's no better choice for the time being in terms of skills. Besides the two passives that I comprehended myself, only observation skill is usable. Ricochet and Magic Aureole can only be looked at, and cannot be unlocked without magic power. So, the thing I lack most now is still an item, or a kind, that can open up the cultivation system of magic for me. Thinking of this, a bitter smile couldn't help but appear on Liang Yue's face, and he subconsciously scratched his itchy scalp. Then choose magic, but this range is too broad. Would that be the same as choosing immortal cultivation? All kinds of equipment, weapons, pills, materials, herbs, spirit stones. The chances of drawing a cultivation technique are slim. Forget it. Magic it is. You can't catch a wolf without putting out a cub. Anyway, I don't lack anything else now, so I have to gamble. System, let it be magic. Ling. Keyword magic has been confirmed. Do you want to start the lottery draw immediately? As soon as the system finished speaking, that familiar roulette wheel immediately appeared in front of Liang Yue, with a black background and a red needle, surrounded by densely packed and colorful hues, making someone feel a little dizzy. Draw now. Start. Stop. Ling. Congratulations, host, you have drawn a 10,000-year Snow Frost, an item from the game World Legend. After taking it, it can restore 100 points of health and magic, and has the effects of healing and refreshing. I'll be damned. I'll be damned. I'll be damned. You're grand. The moment he heard the lottery result, Liang Yue immediately jumped up from his seat, his eyes slightly red, with a face full of ferocity, and kicked the Grand Master's chair behind him fiercely. 1 kick, 2 kicks, 3 kicks later, he still felt unsatisfied. This guy even took out 2 knives from the storage space and unleashed a Musou frenzy on the broken wood. It wasn't until he had chopped for more than a minute, and the wood in front of him had completely turned into a pile of debris, that Liang Yue began to pant heavily and slowly squatted down. I lost the bet. 10,000-year Snow Frost. You might as well have given me a bottle of blessing oil. Liang Yue subconsciously leaned over, took a light sniff, and immediately felt a refreshing sensation pouring into his whole body at the same time. This medicinal fragrance seemed to be accompanied by some kind of coolness. Upon closer inspection, the feeling seemed to place one on the snowy peaks of the mountain under this medicinal fragrance. The bursts of restlessness and irritability in this guy's body instantly disappeared without a trace. After regaining his senses, Liang Yue blinked his eyes at this time, looked at the medicinal material in his palm, felt the only slightly cool touch, and was immediately surprised in his heart system. Can this 10,000-year snow frost be planted? No. Okay. A sense of disappointment flashed in his heart, and Liang Yue then brought his nostrils to the medicinal material again, smelled it hard, and then put it back into the storage space afterward. This guy subconsciously knocked on his head, and a look of realization appeared on his face. It seems that my recent state of mind is a little unstable. The trip to the new Shaolin Five Ancestors world, or rather, going to various heavens and worlds for trials, has indeed had a great impact on Liang Yue, especially since he always descends with hunting-type missions. Killing seems to have become the main theme of the trials, whether it's the surging tide of corpses in the Apocalypse world, or the court hawks in the Five Ancestors world when facing them. No matter how good Liang Yue's state of mind is in private, or how strong his adjustment ability is in short, after leaving the relatively peaceful modern society, Liang Yue will be more or less affected imperceptibly, in addition to breaking out of various and strengthening himself through the unique resources of the heavens and worlds, obtaining strength that others cannot easily obtain. Various negative emotions also accompany his growth at all times, whether it is urging or Liang Yue needs to adjust and face them alone. Is this the sequelae left after killing too much? Waving his hand to take out a big bed from the storage space, Liang Yue then lay straight on the bed, his whole body sinking into the soft quilt, looking up at the vast starry sky for a time. This guy felt a little dazed in his heart. So, those so-called war syndrome patients are real. How come I suddenly got angry for no reason before? I was almost unable to suppress my emotions. What to do? I don't have any cultivation methods around me that can improve my state of mind, and martial arts mental methods such as ice heart technique are also very rare. As for higher level immortal cultivation techniques, I can't access those yet, but if you want to alleviate it, you can also imitate the ancients and recite Buddhist scriptures. Although this young master has practiced Buddhist techniques, I don't believe in Buddhism nurturing my noble spirit. I don't know how. Why don't I read the Taoist canon when I have time later? Anyway, the original version of the scriptures is there. Liang Yue strength, 63 agility, 69 constitution, 72 spirit, 67 bloodline, human, sealed, talents, vigorous spirit, affinity skills, language proficiency, ricochet, conditions not met, not activated, advanced gunmanship proficiency, basic swordsmanship, observation skill, magic aureole, conditions not met, not activated, abilities, simple tool making, mech game character, anti-joint grappling technique, cultivation techniques, golden bell shield, mixed yuan skill, mount hang swordplay, crossing the river on a reed, golden bell shield level 3 current level 3 defensive technique inherited from Bodhidharma, the founder of Shaolin, with the effect of refining the body, strengthening the body, and enhancing the defender's muscle defense technique effect. Defense plus 527 strength plus 20 agility plus 15 constitution plus 18 overall defense plus 5% proficiency. 1039 unmixed yuan skill level 210 current level 2 an authentic Taoist inner cultivation technique, one of the 9 skills of Mount Hui. Its roots can be traced back to the Quanzhen Dao lineage technique effect. Inner key plus 270 strength plus 3 agility plus 3 spirit plus 11 proficiency. 277 300 Mount Hang sword play level 210 current level 2 a rare sword play in the Buddhist lineage that aims at killing, known for its fierce moves and ingenious techniques. Technique effect, sword attack power plus 187 sword accuracy plus 5% attack speed plus 5% proficiency. 281 300 crossing the river on a reed level 210 current level 2 a lightness skill masterpiece passed down by Bodhidharma, the founder of Shaolin. It is said that when cultivated to the highest level, one can cross the rivers and lakes with a red technique effect, jumping power plus 5% movement speed plus 5% agility plus 8 constitution plus 3 proficiency. 239 300. Chapter 105 Hun Yuan Guang. The next day, at dawn, Liang Yue, having rested for less than half a night, was fully refreshed with the help of the McProduced wool bed. A distant sky had just begun to reveal a hint of fish belly white, and the surroundings were still a hazy gray. The walled settlement built on the mountain peak was now surrounded by a thin layer of mist, making the surrounding peaks and grasslands appear particularly hazy. Liang Yue climbed out of bed, smoothed his somewhat damp hair, stretched leisurely, and after exercising his muscles and bones for a while, began his daily morning practice without fail because the golden bell cover that the old abbot of Shaolin gave him was severely incomplete, with only the first 3 layers remaining. Therefore, when Liang Yue had cultivated this secret manual to its end, and there was nothing more to practice for the time being, he stopped practicing this Zen Buddhist divine skill. Instead, he turned to the embrace of Taoism and began practicing primordial unity skill, one of the 9 skills of Mount Hui. Speaking of the cultivation of this primordial unity skill, for Liang Yue, who had never formally come into contact with internal cultivation methods, he was naturally a bit clueless at first. Various Taoist terminologies, human meridians, acupoints, taboos, and even metaphors, made him utterly confused and bewildered. However, it didn't matter that Liang Yue himself didn't know. After all, in the previous New Shaolin 5 Ancestors world, after driving the Tatars back to the north, his status had become very special, and there were plenty of people around him who understood these things. People like Chen Jinan and Hong Ziguan were originally top experts in that world, and through analogy, they gave him a lot of guidance. In addition, the old abbot of Shaolin Temple later, relying on his position as the martial arts elder brother, would occasionally organize a group of experts from various sects to go to Shanhaiguan to help them defend. Among these people, several experts who originally came from the Taoist lineage would also give him some professional guidance. Over time, Liang Yue finally understood the key points of this cultivation method. In fact, he had encountered this problem before when practicing golden bell cover. It was just that at that time, the old monk was there to guide him, and the golden bell cover only had the most basic first 3 layers of body training left. There weren't many taboos among them. In comparison, the most troublesome part of the golden bell cover was the medicinal bath formula that assisted in cultivation. Between the thin mist and the sea of clouds, the morning sun pierced through the sky, slowly plating the clouds with a layer of gold, accompanied by the breeze in his ears and the low-lying green grass at his feet. At this time, Liang Yue stood alone in it, in a steady horse stance, facing the rising sun. His eyes were slightly lowered, his expression serene, and his chest maintained a fixed breathing rhythm. The whole person was like a wooden stake standing in the mountains, becoming very inconspicuous, slowly blending into this magnificent mountain and earth. Of course, in this magical land of China, after a long period of struggle and evolution between Buddhism and Taoism, different degrees of integration have emerged between them. The golden bell cover was gradually evolved by Bodhidharma, the ancestor of Shaolin Temple. After drawing on the theoretical root of key cultivation, it is just a pity that the part about key cultivation behind this divine skill has now been completely lost, and Liang Yue has no chance to see it for the time being. In comparison, the Taoist primordial unity skill also integrates the idea of body training and strengthening the body, and has gradually evolved into its current appearance. At this time, Liang Yue is practicing the introductory foundation of this Taoist skill, the primordial unity stance. This famous stance skill, as long as it is practiced properly, itself has a good body training effect. But it is probably because Liang Yue has practiced golden bell cover before this caused the numbers displayed on the attribute panel to be not very outstanding, and the 4-dimensional values such as strength and agility increased by Liang Yue were relatively small. But thinking about it, it is understandable that the martial arts concepts in the same world are actually very similar. Although the cultivation methods of different schools are different, the ultimate effects they pursue are largely the same, since they are all training the body, then the muscles and bones that have been exercised when practicing golden bell cover, when practiced again in primordial unity skill. The effect will naturally not be as obvious as the former. In comparison, the spiritual realm goal of Taoist primordial unity skill, which pursues the Taoist's naturalness and integration with heaven and earth, has laid a good foundation for Liang Yue in the spiritual aspect while training the body. Therefore, judging from the attribute panel alone, the energy attribute increased by primordial unity skill seems to be the most eye-catching one. The entire cultivation process of this primordial unity stance lasted about an hour. It's not that Liang Yue didn't want to practice for a while longer, nor that he had reached a certain limit of his own and couldn't continue to persevere. It was really that time waits for no one at this time. The sky was already late, even with the double time blessing of the stronghold world. It was already time to go to school in reality, and Liang Yue himself didn't want to be late or skip class after experiencing half a year of training in another world. His heart was actually full of nostalgia for the leisurely campus life, even for Elizabeth, who came to his side with ulterior motives and showed a close attitude. Liang Yue now began to miss her a little in his mind. Tisk people are just cheap. Obviously, there were 1 or 2 moments before I left when I wanted to destroy her, but now it's good. After half a year of separation, she has become a popular commodity again. Casually taking off the Taoist robe that had been soaked in sweat and throwing it aside, Liang Yue then sent himself out of the stronghold world in such a naked appearance with a thought between the flow of the picture. This guy strolled from the basement of his home to the bathroom, turned on the shower, picked up the shampoo next to him, humming a ditty, and began to scrub vigorously. After completing a set of cleaning procedures, Liang Yue came to the mirror in the bathroom, looked at his head of black hair that had now spread to below his shoulders, and frowned subconsciously. After hesitating slightly in his heart, he finally took a pair of scissors and cut off a small section for himself. After drying it, he skillfully tied a bun for himself, and then very narcissistically pulled out 2 strands of hair on both sides of his smooth forehead, and then returned to the bedroom with satisfaction. Chapter 106: The Beginning of Civilization. Time flew by, and the morning's classes passed in a blink. After a hearty lunch, Sam, Holland, and the others were completely let loose due to last-minute adjustment by the teacher. The remaining class in Liang Yue's class that afternoon was unexpectedly changed to PE class. Even more coincidentally, Elizabeth's senior year cram school class was also having PE at the same time, and both groups' activities were confined to the school's gymnasium. Liang Yue's PE teacher was a middle-aged fat man who, it was said, used to be a professional player in the NBA when he was young, but now, times had changed, and due to a long-term lack of regular exercise and competitive enthusiasm, all that remained of this middle-aged man was a body of fat and a slightly decadent and listless spirit. Soon, with no intention of teaching, he simply directed the class to run 5 laps around the basketball court before announcing the dismissal, allowing the students to engage in free activities. In comparison, Elizabeth's senior class seemed to have been dismissed even earlier. When Liang Yue, holding his notebook, came to the edge of the court to find her, the little girl had already bought a sugary soda and was sitting aside, waiting for him with a beaming smile. I haven't seen you for just 1 night, and you seem to have changed a lot again. What exactly happened to you last night? Elizabeth leaned against Liang Yue's side, and her slender little hands subconsciously pinched his arm, and a look of surprise suddenly appeared on her beautiful face. However, the gymnasium was crowded after all, not like the combat training room where only the 2 of them were alone. So the little girl naturally couldn't do a full body check for him as she had done before. Want to know what I did last night? Just come to my house tonight. Liang Yue glanced at the little girl when he heard this, and a charming smile curled up at the corner of his mouth, implying something. However, the feedback he received was only Elizabeth's charming roll of her eyes, plus a light but not too gentle flying elbow to his waist. Liang Yue didn't care about this, enduring the other party's seemingly flirtatious attack. While his hands kept fiddling with the notebook on his lap. At this moment, a detailed construction diagram of classical Chinese architecture was displayed on his computer screen. You seem to still have a faint plant fragrance on you. Unwilling to give up, Elizabeth put his arm in her arms, then raised her cute nose and sniffed lightly at his shoulder. And a look of surprise flashed in her crystal-clear blue eyes. Well, the secret technique I practice does require the use of medicinal baths. This little girl's nose is really sensitive. I estimate it's much better than a dog's. Liang Yue had indeed taken medicinal baths very diligently when he was practicing the golden bell cover, but after he had finished practicing only the first 3 layers of this divine skill at least a month ago, he had already stopped this routine. Is this the legendary medicinal bath of you Easterners? Yes, but I've seen that kind of thing before, and the effect has never been as good as on you. That's because I'm exceptionally talented, and my absorption ability is better than others. HMPH. You're looking at classical architectural structures? Why are you suddenly interested in this? I want to buy a piece of land and build a house for myself with the money you earn from your novel. Wouldn't it be better to just hand it over to professionals? I am the most professional architectural talent TCH. With the backing of the McGain character, Liang Yue naturally dared to boast like this in terms of construction. It's just that he really didn't need to explain it to this little girl. The reason why he suddenly became interested in architectural structures and classical architecture was naturally not a whim of Liang Yue's. He wasn't that idle. In fact, as early as in the new Shaolin 5 Ancestors world, this guy had already begun to research and explore this field. Task name: The Beginning of Civilization. Architecture chapter. Task requirements: establish a village that can accommodate multiple residents, and requires functional buildings such as a blacksmith shop, a breeding farm, farmland, a library, an enchanting table, arrow towers, a warehouse, a bar, housing, and walls. Task rewards, equally divided, 10 villager recruitment quotas. This task was the new stage upgrade task that appeared after Liang Yue completed the animal collection chapter for the upgrade of the Stronghold world originally. In the new Shaolin 5 Ancestors world, the task panel had already been issued by the system long ago, but unfortunately, Liang Yue at that time was still on a journey of training in the heavens and worlds and could not enter the Stronghold world, so he could only put it aside for the time being. However, after this task appeared, Liang Yue never stopped thinking about the content of the task requirements. After all, that was a village to be built within his own Stronghold world. If it couldn't be built beautifully, grandly, and up to standard, how could it be worthy of his own elegant and high-class personality? Moreover, the task reward had already clearly stated that he would be given 10 villager recruitment quotas afterward. According to the information Liang Yue had previously obtained from the system, the selection of these quotas could all be selected from within the worlds of the heavens, although it had to be a world that he had experienced before. After all, there was still a long way to go. With these 10 quotas, Liang Yue could also fulfill the promise he had made to Takashima and Kiriko Shizuka, summoning the two women to his side as villagers so that they could completely escape the world under the crisis of the apocalypse. Moreover, in this way, within the Vastmic world, Liang Yue would no longer be alone. It's better to have two beautiful women by your side than to be lonely alone. Furthermore, even without the requirements of the system task, Liang Yue himself seemed to be planning to build a sturdy and beautiful building somewhere suitable, and the starting point for this guy was to build a library that could hold all the books and classics he had scavenged from the imperial history of the 5 Ancestors world. Invisibly, Liang Yue's idea coincided with a library in the functional buildings of the village required by the system. Then, here comes the question: what kind of existence is a library that can hold a collection of books on the scale of the imperial history, plus the various classics that Liang Yue scavenged from the Shaolin Library Pavilion and other Manchu nobles and the 8 great imperial merchants? Answer: that must be another imperial history with a larger scale and a more magnificent and broad architectural area. So, then there is another question, that is, since there is such a huge library in his village that is even larger than the imperial history of the Chinese imperial capital, then, in order to be worthy of the scale of this magnificent building, to what extent should he build the other buildings in his village? Probably, just make them a little smaller for the time being, and leave some potential for improvement. After all, even after the village is established, the system will only give me 10 quotas. Chapter 107 Hulk appears. After school in the afternoon, Liang Yue, as usual, went to his kendo club, holding 2 swords, and began to practice swordsmanship against the rubber mannequin. However, compared to his previous training mode, which was just relying on his own feelings and randomly hacking at the various vital parts of the mannequin at this time, Liang Yue, after experiencing half a year of training in the world of the new legend of Shaolin, began to pay more attention to the most basic moves when facing the mannequin target, regardless of the direction of his attack, the direction of his slashing and stabbing, or whether he was aiming for the vital parts of the target. Liang Yue was consciously or unconsciously paying more attention to his training posture, how to chop, how to slash, how to pick, how to stab, when making these movements, how to use his body, his muscles, bones, and even the coordination of his steps and posture more freely. If Liang Yue's previous training mode was to use the double blades in his hand to simply attack, slashing at the vital parts of the target, and performing offensive drills with the purpose of killing the opponent, then now, his training focus has completely shifted to his own body, no longer simply killing, but through continuous moves, slashing, picking swords, thrusting, parrying and other actions, purposefully exercising his body. In order to achieve the basic foundation of swordsmanship cultivation, this is the cultivation idea of the Hangshan swordplay. Judging from this basic stage alone, this swordplay seems to be a Buddhist sword technique that mainly focuses on strengthening oneself and defending against enemies. However, this is only the basic part of it. Once the cultivator reaches a certain standard, crosses the basic part, and begins to advance to the intermediate and advanced stages of this swordplay, he will clearly find that the idea of this swordplay begins to change abruptly. The attacking and killing moves in the swordplay also begin to increase linearly, relying on the physical conditions laid down in the basic stage, as well as the reaction to various moves. The practitioner of this swordplay also begins to gradually transform from a swordsman who is biased towards defensive 4-dimensional to an offensive role. Anyway, in this guy's opinion, it's always better to have swordplay to practice than not to have it, as long as he can successfully cultivate this swordplay to a certain level. Then with the convenience of the system, he can also smoothly add an extra stroke to his attribute panel. After all, the drop-down passive attributes of the various exercises, Qigong, and swordplay on that panel are all real, with each additional decent skill. Liang Yue's strength will increase by a large margin. The reason why he chose the Hangshan swordplay from the many exercises and secrets he obtained in the imperial history was entirely because this swordplay happened to be a double sword style cultivation secret that suited him. As for whether this Hangshan swordplay really came from the Hangshan school, one of the 5 mountain sword sects in the legend, or whether it is a sword technique practiced by female sects, Liang Yue himself does not care at all. In this way, after training for about an hour, Liang Yue was once again called into a fighting training room alone by Elizabeth, the blonde girl, under the watchful eyes of a group of single dogs in the Kendo Club, who were filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. However, because Liang Yue was preoccupied at this time, after finishing the practice of swordsmanship, his attention almost completely shifted to the design and construction of the library in his village, operating the laptop, writing and drawing constantly with paper and pen. In a short while, he sketched out a classical architectural outline that combined beauty and practicality. Seeing that his hard work was finally rewarded, Liang Yue's heart suddenly surged with a sense of inexplicable excitement and anticipation. Rubbing his hands together, he couldn't wait to run home immediately and realize his work, but at this time, he completely failed to notice that there was still a tempting blonde beauty sitting in his arms. And this guy also invisibly set a very rare record of being unmoved by beauty. As the saying goes, a serious man is the most handsome, especially someone like Liang Yue, who has a prince-like face and a body that is strong to the point of exceeding human limits, but can still be detached and focused. So, at this time, Elizabeth looked at his almost perfect profile, and her heart suddenly rippled. After a long time, she suddenly opened her silver teeth and bit the guy's shoulder hard. "Hiss, why did you bite me? You're ignoring me." "How am I ignoring you? Aren't I holding you? Do you know what the biggest insult to a woman is? It's your current state." He. "Okay, it's my fault, HMPH. You buzz." Just as Liang Yue was holding Elizabeth in his arms and passionately kissing, a special vibration suddenly came from the air. The sound was not loud, but the frequency of the vibration was really uncomfortable, so much so that the blonde girl in his arms frowned, stopped kissing, and subconsciously covered her ears with her hands. Seeing this, Liang Yue immediately hugged the woman tightly, and looked out the door with some vigilance in his heart. However, only a moment later, the vibration disappeared. Instead, a series of gunshots and explosions rang out, and the direction of the sound was actually from the nearby university campus. Relying on his senses and hearing far beyond ordinary people, Liang Yue could now cross a long distance and clearly capture the roars and screams in the air. This roar, that vocal line, doesn't seem like something ordinary people can have. It's too rough, and the strength is amazing. Subconsciously, Liang Yue hugged Elizabeth in his arms and came to the window, and the two's eyes turned to the direction of the neighboring university at the same time. However, before the two could take a few glances in that direction, 2 tall and strong men in suits had already blocked their view like a wall. Liang Yue recognized these 2 men in suits. They were part of Elizabeth's bodyguards. Well, at this moment, a roar suddenly came from far to near, changing its timbre and intensity at an extremely fast speed. Accompanying the sound was a green behemoth. The figure crossed over the neighboring university, drew a high parabola in the air, and then slammed heavily on the playground of his own high school. The huge falling force suddenly impacted a pit under his feet, scaring a group of children who were playing football to retreat and scream in horror. Then, the green figure took 2 steps to run up on the court, roared lowly, and then jumped into the distance again. The Hulk. Chapter 108, Night Umbrella. Despite knowing that the Marvel plot was imminent, Liang Yue had no intention of actively interfering. Starting with Tony Stark's kidnapping in the Middle East, the Hulk has now appeared in New York so quickly. If I'm not mistaken, Bruce Banner and his former girlfriend, Betty, General Ross's daughter, should be seeking help from a professor at a nearby university, asking him to help develop an antidote to suppress his abilities. To this end, this honest man has repeatedly mailed the professor a lot of his own Green Hulk blood. According to the script, this seems to be the source of another chaos. The emergence of villains such as Abomination and Red Hulk later on all stemmed from this blood. However, relatively speaking, there have always been many differences between the Marvel comic world and the film world. In addition to the strength of power levels, many powerful characters have been cut and reduced from Liang Yue's own personal experience. The current Marvel reality world is likely just a movie-level plane of the Marvel multiverse, and the degree of danger is relatively small of course. Whether it's the comics or the movies, Liang Yue doesn't plan to get involved anyway. Even if Thanos' snap is powerful, it won't affect the world outside the Marvel universe. After figuring this out, this guy stopped worrying about the plot. As long as the trouble doesn't come to me. After returning home, Liang Yue ate something hastily and then couldn't wait to enter the Stronghold world. Based on his previous exploration of this MIC world, Liang Yue has roughly completed 1/3 of the exploration of the map in his hand. Centered on the mountain basin in this known terrain, there are many places suitable for village sites. It must have mountains and water, it must have flowers and trees, the terrain must be flat, and the climate must be mild. Well, but diversity must also be appropriately considered, so that it will be easy for me to plant various crops later. It's best to have a river flowing through or directly across the village. The location near the sea is the best, with a mountain behind it, a tall one, that can see the white snow-capped peaks. In terms of climate conditions, the living area should naturally be as mild as possible, but it should not be too far away from other terrains, such as grasslands, rainforests, deserts, highlands, and wastelands, preferably all together. Speaking of which, are my conditions a bit too high? Sitting on a stone within the high mountain walls, Liang Yue was looking at the map in his hand with a pitiful expression, scratching his head a little embarrassedly, with a shy smile on his face. However, just as this guy was preparing to lower the selection criteria again and just pick a place to make do, a glimpse of something amazing actually found a similar place on the very corner of the map. According to the impression in his memory, that was an alluvial plain of a large river. Judging from the map, this river is very magical. In addition to its considerable water flow and flowing north into the sea, it is also a dividing line for a complex terrain. One bank of the river is a plain, covered with green grass, and not far away is a hilly area, covered with oak and birch trees, and further away is a towering mountain on the other bank of the river. The climate magically changed. Near the sea is a boundless desert, extending slenderly into the distance. A few native cacti and withered saplings grow sparsely on it. Liang Yue didn't know exactly how big this desert was, because this was already the edge of the map at the beginning. In order to maximize the efficiency of exploring the map in his hand, this guy didn't continue to do useless work when he walked to this area adjacent to the desert. Closer to the inland is a tropical grassland terrain. The color of the grass there is slightly yellowish, and many acacia trees grow on the grassland. The only regret is that there is no rainforest climate formed around this area, and it is also a considerable distance from the highlands and snowfields. Really going to reclaim land and build a village there? You know that a little further away is the end of the map. I still have a long way to go before I finish exploring the one in my hand. Could it be that I have to make another one? Okay, I have to do it sooner or later. Umbrella of the Night, from the Doraemon world, a product of future technology, with a strong light absorption effect. When opened, everything under the umbrella cover is night. The selling price is 500 points. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, 3 days have passed. During this period, Liang Yue crossed thousands of mountains and rivers and finally came to the delta alluvial plain he had chosen on the map. After slightly leveling the land and replacing the surface soil with stone blocks, this guy began to break ground under the blowing of the sea breeze and mountain air. The place designed by Liang Yue before for storing books is envisioned to be a pagoda-shaped building. Its overall structure presents an octagonal trapezoidal columnar geometric structure. After his precise calculations, the first floor space of this pagoda is 33 meters high, and the internal area is about 3,000 to 4,000 square meters. The entire pagoda is surrounded by 2 units of thick stone blocks. There are no windows on the tower, and there is only one door for entry and exit. The layout inside the tower is distributed in the shape of bagua, and rows of bookshelves construct the various directions of bag. With a Tai Chi circle in the middle is a blank rest area, and 2 copper incense burners are located above the 2 formation eyes of Tai Chi, using sandalwood and agarwood as incense. Below the incense burner, a unit of pit was also dug, filled with rolling magma under the characteristic of infinite water source in the MIC world. This magma will continuously provide heat for the incense burner. Liang Yue built 2 layers of pagoda space like this in these 3 days, with equal height and smaller area as it went up. The bookshelves on the first tower floor mainly display the classics, history, philosophy, collections, medicine, agriculture, miscellaneous books, myths and legends, etc. obtained from the Imperial History Museum. Only those key training methods, Kingong, weapons, hidden weapons, and other genre types of books are placed in the space on the second floor. However, these mere hundreds of cultivation secrets cannot even fill a bookshelf. let alone the entire second tower floor therefore. The current construction of this pagoda has temporarily stopped here following the stairs up. In the prepared space on the third floor, only a short wall of less than 1 meter has been built around the perimeter, and torches are inserted into the wall. Liang Yue built a gazebo here with wood, put a chair, and occasionally comes up to relax below this pagoda. This guy also dug out a basement, specially used to hold the gold, silver, treasures, jade antiques, and other items he had collected. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109: A Sudden Epiphany. For 3 days, besides the necessary internal energy cultivation, Liang Yue spent most of his time in the space world on the construction of the village. Regarding the pagoda library, he only built 2 floors in the end, and there was no need to build any higher for the time being. Besides that, things like blacksmith shops, farmlands, pastures, arrow towers, bars, warehouses, walls, and even housing were not particularly troublesome functional facilities as long as the planning was done well in the early stage, and the internal structure of each building was designed well, with the help of the McGame character's almost foolproof construction ability when the actual construction was carried out. The progress of the entire village changed almost every day, every moment. In just 3 days, Liang Yue jumped up and down, creating a village of considerable size on the barren plains by the sea while building. He also trained his lightning skill, although there was still a considerable gap from perfection. The main body of the village's buildings and the layout had all been built by him. I estimate that in another 2 days, when I finish the houses, the eaves of the pagoda, the street lights on the streets, the farmland irrigation, the roadside flower beds, and so on, this village will be almost completed. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, Liang Yue stood on top of the library, the tallest building in the village, with his hands on his hips, looking down at the village illuminated by torches, and a sense of accomplishment arose in his heart at this time. The sky was completely dark, and a full moon was gradually rising into the air. The bright moonlight shone on the earth, and not far from his sight, layers of waves were constantly rolling forward, washing the beach standing opposite the sea. Behind Liang Yue was a rolling hilly area, where a boundless sea of trees was growing. A small breeze blew, and the leaves swayed gently, making a rustling sound occasionally. The sounds of cattle and sheep could be heard from the forest. Liang Yue stood at the top of this brightly lit building, and for a moment, he couldn't help but feel something in his heart, and his mind gradually became calm and clear. Unconsciously, facing the sea and the distant mountains, he adopted the most relaxed Hunan stance, lowered his eyebrows, let go of his mind, and silently felt the sounds of nature around him. In the sky, the full moon also unknowingly rose from the distance to the center of the sky, and then slowly fell from the top of the sky until a certain moment, a fiery red light suddenly rose from the end of the sea, and the originally dark sky suddenly nurtured a purple glow. At this moment Liang Yue looked at the purple light that was spreading in the sky, and his originally calm state of mind became somewhat agitated. The original peaceful rhythm of breathing suddenly accelerated, his chest rose and fell like a bellows, and even a whistling sound came from his slightly open mouth as if he was devouring the essence and energy of this world like a whale. Inhale, exhale, Hunan Guang level 410 current level 4 authentic Taoist internal cultivation method, one of the 9 skills of Mount Hui. Its roots can be traced back to the Quanzhen Dao lineage. Internal energy effect: internal energy plus 1087 strength plus 8 agility plus 5 energy plus 27 physical, magical defense plus 300 elemental resistance plus 15 proficiency. 2123 5000 good. In just half a night, the internal energy has crossed a level. The proficiency has directly increased by more than 1,600. This is the legendary enlightenment, right? So fierce. I originally thought that it would take at least a few months to cultivate to the 4th level. Until the next trial opens, it is estimated that it will be difficult to advance, but now it has directly crossed over. It's only been 3 or 4 days since returning from the 5 ancestor plane trial. I am really a genius. After waking up from cultivation, feeling the changes in his body, Liang Yue's heart suddenly fell into a burst of excitement, and he unconsciously began to rub and pinch his limbs, chest, and other parts looking like a curious baby. This is not him deliberately making a fuss, or showing a clumsy performance, but after Hunan Guang entered the 4th level, Liang Yu's body did undergo some subtle changes. The root cause of this is that he has officially entered the acquired realm of martial artists. After cultivating to the 4th level of the technique, the stage of internal energy cultivation has also begun to move from the original simple breathing and energy absorption, strengthening the body, to the category of qi circulation in the 8 extraordinary meridians. The cultivation of Hunan Guang can be divided into 2 stages. The first part is the basic cultivation represented by the 1st to 3rd levels of the technique. At this stage, cultivators can only be called quasi-martial artists. Although the internal breath exists in the body, it has almost no attack and auxiliary characteristics, except for having a certain effect of strengthening the body. The second stage of the technique is the acquired realm represented by the 4th to 10th levels. After officially stepping into the field of qi circulation in the 8 extraordinary meridians, cultivators can be considered to have officially entered the martial artist realm. The internal qi in their body also evolves into internal force, and through the way of traveling and consuming in the various meridians of the human body, it assists the body development of the martial artist, indirectly enhancing the power of various moves of the martial artist. When the cultivator advances his cultivation in the acquired realm to a certain level, he can also extend the internal force in his body to the outside, or enhance the power of the technique's moves, or directly attach it to weapons to strengthen the means and changes of dealing with the enemy. Hunan Guang is such an internal cultivation method created below the innate level. Each level up, the difficulty of cultivation and the time spent will increase exponentially. Some people in their 70s or 80s may not be able to cultivate to the top level of the acquired realm, but for some talented people, casually practicing for a few years may reach the highest stage of this technique under the coincidence of opportunity. It may also be possible to break through to a higher realm level. All of these are mostly the blessings and luck at play. Liang Yue has never been an overly conceited person, and his mentality has always been very correct. Of course, in this world composed of Marvel and various American comics, this guy can't even if he wants to. However, after experiencing the epiphany last night, Liang Yue suddenly felt that he might also be a genius. Liang Yue identity, acquired martial artist internal force, 1087 strength, 68 agility, 71 constitution, 72 energy, 84 bloodline, human, sealed, talents, vigorous spirit, affinity skills, language proficiency, ricochet, conditions not met, not activated, advanced gun mastery, basic swordsmanship, observation, magic emblem, conditions not met, not activated, abilities, simple tool making, mech game character, anti-joint grappling techniques, golden bell cover, Hunan Guang, Hang Shan swordplay, crossing the river with a reed. Sure enough, the internal force and magic power of martial artists cannot be used in common. Is this because the grade of internal force is not high enough? However, there is an additional martial artist identity column on the panel. This can also be regarded as a disguised recognition of its status. Chapter 110 Dating. Today happened to be the weekend, and Liang Yue, free from school, finished a quick breakfast and refocused his attention on the village's construction. At this moment, he was holding a pickaxe, carefully traversing the edge of the pagoda library's roof. After a series of quick taps and strikes, he created windows in the middle of the surrounding stone walls. The window's exterior was also fitted with a ring of purely decorative wooden railings. Subsequently, the 8 ridged corners of the pagoda building were also dismantled and replaced with raw black oak logs by Liang Yue. Believe it or not, after this simple and crude modification, the original rigid octagonal trapezoidal pillars now possessed a touch of elegance and refinement when viewed from afar. After pondering for a while with a shake of his head, Liang Yue looked around at this moment, taking in all the nooks and crannies of the library. After confirming that he couldn't make further modifications to this place with his current abilities, he turned and left the room. In the following time, Liang Yue once again took out the pickaxe, bending over and diligently cultivating the ground in the village. Soon, a canal took shape, connecting to the big river outside the village. Slowly, with the help of buckets, a stream of fresh water was introduced. Subsequently, under Liang Yue's guidance, the water circled the walls around the village's edge, eventually forming a moat. After finishing that, this guy still felt a bit unsatisfied, so he once again raised the pickaxe, swinging it wildly, and in a short while, he carved out a circular pool in the central location of the village. In the middle of the pool, he also placed a piece of Tehu stone of the highest quality, obtained from the home of a certain Qing dynasty noble. After washing his face with the clear, bottomless pool water, Liang Yue subconsciously looked up at the sky. Unbeknownst to him, it was already late morning in the stronghold world, with the scorching sun high in the sky. Crap, he cursed inwardly, and then quickly, with a thought, he flashed back to the real world. After quickly taking a shower, Cleaning up his personal hygiene, and changing into the outfit he had prepared last night, Liang Yue quickly ran to his Hummer, stepped on the gas, and hurried out. 9:30, half an hour earlier than the agreed time. Not bad. After rushing all the way, when Liang Yue parked his car and hurriedly arrived at the most bustling commercial district in Brooklyn, only 10 minutes or so had passed since he left. However, today was, after all, Liang Yue's first date with Elizabeth, and as a fellow man, it was right to arrive a little earlier than the woman in order to not look out of place standing next to that royal noblewoman. He had specially made a trip to a high-end clothing store a couple of days ago, asking the shop assistant to put together 2 sets of clothes that he could wear to formal occasions. There was no other way. At Liang Yue's current age, when he should be focused on his studies, there was simply no need to wear anything too nice in China. In school, he wore a uniform, and at home after school, or when going out to play, it was either a t-shirt or a shirt, and at most, he would buy a nicer coat in the autumn and winter. After arriving in New York, Aunt Liu did accompany him to buy several high-end goods. Unfortunately, in the following period, Liang Yue grew rapidly from around 1.75 meters to his current height of 1.84 meters, to the point that now, even when going on a date with a female classmate, he still had to groom himself in order to create a bit of a surprise atmosphere for Elizabeth when they met. Before Liang Yue left the stronghold world, he even specially cut a red rose with 6 budding flowers from the flower bed in the village, intending to take advantage of the convenience of the storage space to perform a magic trick of creating something from nothing in front of this little girl. He just didn't know if his little trick would work in front of a genuine royal princess. What Liang Yue didn't expect was that before he could give his little gift, the other party surprised him first. Ahem, Ms. Elizabeth, you are a full hour and a half late in front of this woman. Liang Yue pretended to look at the non-existent watch on his wrist, glancing back and forth between this blonde girl and his wrist a few times with the system by his side. He naturally knew very well that the time was now 11:30 in the morning. In order to show enough sincerity in this date, Liang Yue had been waiting at the agreed location for a full 2 hours. However, looking at the blonde beauty standing prettily in front of him at this moment, covering her mouth and giggling, he seemed to have no choice but to helplessly accept his fate, hoping for a better outcome later. Snap, here. For you, accompanied by a crisp snap of his fingers. The red rose with its competing blooms suddenly appeared in Liang Yue's hand. Then, he stretched out his hand and presented it to the woman in front of him. Sure enough, Elizabeth's crystal-clear eyes lit up instantly when she saw the rose. Subconsciously leaning forward, she smelled the fiery red petals, and a look of intoxication immediately appeared on her beautiful face. Thank you, this flower seems a bit unusual. Ah, what's wrong, Liang Yue? Don't you know to remove the thorns before giving roses? Oh? I forgot. Yug. Seeing the blonde girl's appearance of about to erupt, Liang Yue hurriedly took the lead and hugged her in his arms, pressing his big mouth onto her pouting pink lips. In time, the comings and goings of people around them did not disturb the intimacy of the two. At this moment, the noisy voices seemed to have become beautiful background notes at this moment, and even time seemed to slow down at this moment. Grumble. After a long time, the wailing sound of Liang Yue's stomach twisting in his abdomen interrupted the two's selfless enthusiasm. At this moment, Elizabeth, with her fair little fist, lightly hammered this guy's ribs, glared at him with annoyance, and then smiled and leaned against his chest. Liang Yue subconsciously rubbed his stomach, and awkwardly twitched a corner of his mouth. I ate breakfast before, how did I digest it so quickly? Inhale, exhale, I'm hungry too, let's go get something to eat first. Elizabeth raised her head from his chest, with 2 pink blushes on her cheeks, took a deep breath, and bit her lip while tidying the hair in front of her forehead. Yeah, what do you want to eat? Liang Yue asked, helping the woman to tidy her collar. Anything's fine, how about that place over there? Elizabeth looked around at this time, and then pointed to a restaurant across the road that seemed to have a nice environment. Following the direction of the woman's finger, Liang Yue glanced at the signboard of that shop and immediately nodded. German restaurant? Okay, I heard that German cuisine is a bit like our Chinese northeastern cuisine, the taste should be good. Chapter 111 been covered? Give me a roasted pork knuckle, and a sauerkraut sausage potato salad. Apple pie. Want a drink? How about a bottle of wine? Home for drinks, let's have a bottle of cider. Tisk, this wine tastes a bit astringent. I'll treat you to some of my cider later. Didn't know you had the habit of collecting wine. It's not collecting wine, it's that I brew it myself. The taste is much better than these on the market. Alright, don't you believe me? I'm not bragging. These on the market, whether it's white wine, beer, red wine, or fruit wine, none of them taste as good as what I brew myself. Okay, I believe you. You believe your sister. Looking at the slightly strange smile on Elizabeth's face, Liang Yue rolled his eyes, feeling somewhat helpless in his heart. Speaking of which, ever since he bought those wine barrels from the Stardew Valley World in the system store, Liang Yue's brewing career has officially begun. Although he himself doesn't drink much, he has a strong interest in turning the fruits, hops, and other crops from the Stronghold world into wine whenever the brewing inside the barrel is complete. He will collect it in a timely manner and then replace it with new brewing materials. Even when he was training in the new Shaolin 5 Ancestors world later, Liang Yue didn't abandon this habit when the finished products in the wine cellar couldn't be collected temporarily due to covering and other issues. This guy even remade a batch of oak wine barrels to continue this business after more than half a year of diligent work. Liang Yue now has a batch of homemade wines stored in his warehouse. Just yesterday, this guy even opened up an underground collection room under the bar in his village. Specifically for storing this batch of wine brews and cider is one of Liang Yue's most proud works. Among this batch of wines, let's not talk about the fermentation and brewing process. Anyway, with the oak wine barrels, it's all a foolproof automatic brewing operation. The key is that the raw materials Liang Yue uses when brewing cider are not ordinary. They are not ordinary apples grown on trees, but the special products of the Mick world, things that fall from the dense oak tree crowns. After finishing the meal, the two officially started shopping. The specific situation is probably that Elizabeth walked in front, and Liang Yue passively followed behind. Almost every decent shop in the entire commercial district was visited by the two. As a result of this trip, Elizabeth didn't buy anything for herself. Although this blonde girl was always in high spirits, according to Liang Yue's observation, she didn't show any desire to buy any goods. This completely thwarted his original plan to spend a lot of money and step forward to pay for the lady. On the contrary, Liang Yue himself was forcibly given a watch worth more than $300,000 by Elizabeth as the first gift. As a result, when this woman took out her Centurion black card from her bag to make a payment, the eyes of the surrounding shop assistants looking at this guy were a little strange. In the following time, the two didn't play any more novel tricks. Just like ordinary young couples, they walked into the cinema hand in hand and they asked for a box, and after entering the room, Elizabeth leaned close to Liang Yue's arms. The two just sat quietly on the sofa, intimately snuggling together, occasionally looking at each other and kissing. The movie on the big screen became their background wall after a movie. The relationship between the couple was obviously much closer. Not to say that they were inseparable, but at least there was already some atmosphere of being in love when they came out of the cinema. The sky outside was already a bit dim. The street lights on both sides of the street have been lit up, but pedestrians are hardly seen under the illumination of this little bit of dim yellow light. It actually set off a bit of a romantic atmosphere for this not-so-special autumn evening. It's a pity that good times don't last long. Just as the two were holding hands and strolling leisurely on one side of the street, Liang Yue was already planning in his heart whether to take advantage of a candlelight dinner to take down this woman. Four tall figures have surrounded the two from front, back, left and right. After noticing that the situation was not right, Liang Yue looked up and confirmed almost immediately that the other party was not the bodyguard of the blonde girl beside him, but four strangers. Your Excellency Elizabeth, Viscount Carl would like to invite you to his hotel for a drink. A middle-aged brown-haired man in a black and white tuxedo with a bit of an evil charm on his face stepped forward a few steps at this time, and bowed to Elizabeth with one hand behind his back in a very pretentious manner. At the same time, the other three took the opportunity to approach and circle them inside. Yellow-skinned monkey, you can get out, while I haven't developed hostility towards you. Saying that, a tall and strong white man with a height of at least 2 meters and 2 meters stretched out a big hand almost like a bear's paw and grabbed Liang Yue's face in the eyes, overlooking himself. There was undisguised teasing and contempt. Seeing this, Liang Yue slightly curved the corners of his mouth and stretched out a hand to meet him. In an instant, he grabbed the opponent's wrist and exerted force with his 5 fingers. With a crisp crack sound, with a twist and a break, the opponent's entire arm was immediately unloaded by him at the same time. He quickly raised a foot and kicked hard at the side of the tall man's leg socket. Crack! The thick legs wrapped in suit pants could not hide the fact that they were bent into an obtuse angle. The white man, who had been overlooking Liang Yue, immediately softened and knelt down in front of him, screaming in pain. This sudden change obviously exceeded the expectations of the other three. The middle-aged evil man, who was still bowing to Elizabeth, raised his head in surprise at this moment. It's just that I never thought that what greeted his sight was Liang Yue's solid kick. With a muffled bang sound, the middle-aged man was kicked into the air by the huge force on his chest. However, this man was obviously not simple either. After taking a hard kick from Liang Yue and rising into the air, he did not forget to grit his teeth and order the two subordinates behind him. Kill him. Chapter 112 Vampire. accompanied by a non-human roar. The two men behind Elizabeth instantly twisted their faces, their features contorted, their eyes bloodshot, and they bared small, overly long canine teeth at Liang Yue with a spread of their fingers. The nails extended from the flesh like curved hooks, and they pounced towards Liang Yue in the distance, baring their fangs and claws. Their speed and agility were beyond that of ordinary people, making them look like two ferocious beasts about to hunt. He was no longer the naive rookie who had just arrived in New York, whether it was the zombies, skeleton archers, and spider monsters in the Mick world, or the many martial arts masters in the new Shaolin Five Ancestors world. All had invisibly tempered his entire being compared to them. These two strange creatures were just a small scene, at this moment, facing these two beings that were clearly not normal humans, and their imminent attack. Liang Yue narrowed his eyes, advanced instead of retreating, and with a stomp of his foot, he rushed towards one of them. Iron Mountain lean. With a muffled bang sound, blood mist sprayed as Liang Yue stopped abruptly, while the monster that had come into contact with him was directly knocked away, accompanied by a series of cracking sounds of broken bones. The speed at which it flew away was even faster than when it came. However, Liang Yue did not rashly relax. Because the other humanoid beast had already jumped up and pounced. The claws on its hands were almost touching his forehead. Liang Yue was not alarmed by this. He simply sidestepped and deftly dodged the incoming claw, reached out, and firmly grabbed the opponent's wrist with his 5 fingers. Using the force of the opponent's forward momentum, he swung it forcefully. With a muffled thwack sound, this guy fell flat on the ground, and Liang Yue raised his foot and kicked hard into the opponent's armpit with a crisp crack sound. The opponent's thick arm was instantly dislocated from the shoulder. However, this sudden pain seemed to only stimulate the ferocity of this creature, even with one arm dislocated and pinned to the ground by Liang Yue. This guy's ferocity did not diminish. The other claw was still waving towards him with all its might. Crack. Then, Liang Yue kicked the elbow joint to pieces. What he didn't expect was that even now that it had lost both arms, the opponent still refused to yield, baring its fangs and letting out a threatening growl. A pair of blood-red eyes stared at him intently. What the hell is this thing? It doesn't look like a normal person at all. Although the entire battle process sounds complicated, it actually only happened in a few breaths. Looking down at the stubborn face in front of him, Liang Yue's lips curled slightly, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. He stepped on the opponent's waist, and with a gentle vibration under his foot, a clever force directly separated a person's spine from his upper body. After removing the opponent's limbs, Liang Yue ignored him. Looking up, the charming middle-aged man who had been kicked away by him earlier had just barely landed on the ground. Liang Yue hadn't used lethal force with that big kick earlier, otherwise, the position he kicked wouldn't have been the opponent's chest, but his head. But even so, the force Liang Yue used at that time was definitely not light. If it were an ordinary person, they would at least have suffered a fractured sternum, but at this moment, it was difficult for him to see any signs of injury on this middle-aged man. After landing, this charming man even took the time to tidy up his exquisite handmade suit. Then, he looked at Liang Yue with a frosty expression. Chinese martial artist, you dare to oppose the Great Blood Clan? Are you prepared to accept the punishment? Blood Clan? Vampires. Upon hearing this, a strange light burst out from the depths of Liang Yue's eyes. He moved his feet slightly, inconspicuously blocking Elizabeth behind him, while his gaze curiously sized up the other party's entire body. His appearance was like observing a novel object. You're courting death? Seeing Liang Yue's behavior, a few traces of exasperation appeared on the charming man's face. Before he could even see the opponent's movements, his entire body had already disappeared from the spot, his speed extremely fast. Wherever he passed, he actually created a series of phantoms in the air. Compared to the other 3 people, or rather, vampires, whose beast-like hunting attacks were only direct and straightforward, this middle-aged man was obviously the one with the brains, and he constantly changed positions during his movements. His whole person was just like a bat, constantly moving in a Z trajectory in Liang Yue's line of sight, shifting left and right, and the direction of movement also had an arc. Soon, a series of afterimages filled the entire area, coupled with the continuous roars from his mouth. For a time, it actually created a sound effect of alternating left and right channels in Liang Yue's ears. Finally, after almost moving his figure across every inch of land in front of him, and when Liang Yue was getting a little impatient, this vampire finally revealed his ultimate move. He spun and jumped at an extremely fast speed. The roar in his mouth stopped completely, and he raised his hand to strike Liang Yue's temple with a flying claw. The force on the claw even rubbed out a piercing screech in the air. Wuxie silver blade flashed past Liang Yue, like a dazzling crescent moon, instantly slashing across the opponent's body at the critical moment. In an instant, this vampire, who looked to be middle-aged from the outside, was directly cut in two by his blade. Whether it was the claws or the head, in just one encounter, they instantly separated from his body. Fancy and flashy, it's better to just rush up, that's much more enjoyable. Swish! The stench of blood immediately sprayed into the sky like a fountain, and Liang Yue, unable to avoid it, had his outfit that he had just bought a few days ago completely soaked. Elizabeth, on the other hand, seemed to have sensed something in advance, and had quietly stood dozens of meters away. Seeing their leader beheaded, the three people who were lying on the ground earlier all opened their mouths wide and let out piercing roars at Liang Yue. Each and every one of them had a look of dissatisfaction on their faces. Alright, since you're not human, then I don't have any psychological burden. Looking at the appearance of these three people, Liang Yue waved a tang blade in his hand, and the blood beads on the blade instantly scattered on the ground. Just as he was about to deal with them, the blonde girl behind him walked over. At this time, while walking with elegant steps, she also reminded him to deal with these vampires. Silver weapons work best. Silver weapons? I don't have that stuff. Although the tang blade in Liang Yue's hand looked exceptionally silver, it was synthesized from genuine iron ingots and silver, a substance that is not produced in the Mick world, except for the batch of silver that he had looted from the hands of the Qing Court's dignitaries in the new Shaolin 5 Ancestors Plane. This guy did not have any silver minerals suitable for forging him. Speaking of which, in terms of lethality to vampires, silver doesn't seem to be ranked at the top, right? Chapter 113 Plan Bankruptcy. Thinking of this, a thought suddenly flashed in Liang Yue's mind, and with a flip of his sleeve, a ball of light yellow radiance appeared in his palm. This radiance was not dazzling, but the light it emitted seemed extremely penetrating, illuminating the surrounding streets almost instantly. A sense of warmth emanated from this radiance, slowly enveloping the surroundings. Under the illumination of this light, the three vampires on the ground were the first to bear the brunt, ushering in their doomsday in just a single exchange. These three white men, who originally had fierce expressions, were melted away by this radiance like snow melting in the spring sun. Their screams were filled with intense fear and despair, and no matter how they tried to block it, they couldn't escape. Finally, with a boom, they turned into a cloud of ashes and dissipated on the ground. The middle-aged, demonic man whom he had previously cut into pieces with a single strike also couldn't escape the fate of turning to ash, and soon, together with the blood that had stained Liang Yue's body, turned into a cloud of dust, scattering in the air. What is this? It's so effective against vampires. Elizabeth, who was behind him, also walked over at this moment, looking at the ball of light in Liang Yue's hand with a face full of curiosity, her blue eyes reflecting a crystal-clear emerald color. This is. I obtained a kind of solar energy using a special method. It originally didn't have much power, but I didn't expect it to be so effective against these vampires. The radiance in Liang Yue's hand was precisely the energy that the sunflower from the Plants vs. Zombies world had condensed from sunlight. Using its special ability in the proper game, the only use for this thing was as a trading chip, which could be used to exchange for various functional plans. But Liang Yue obviously didn't have this ability. Therefore, after being summoned by that sunflower, this special solar energy had been stored in a system all along. Now, more than half a year had passed, and dozens of hundreds of thousands of these things had been collected continuously. Liang Yue had accidentally recalled the rumor that vampires were afraid of sunlight, so he took a little of this energy from the system with a try-it-and-see attitude, and he didn't expect that he would actually guess right. However, don't underestimate the small size of the radiance in his hand, because it was actually a product of the system stacking the solar energy together using special means. Previously, Liang Yue was afraid that the effect of a single ball of light would be too weak, so he took out 100 of them from the system at once according to the numerical values in Plants vs. Zombies. The solar energy summoned by the sunflower each time is 50 points, and now these 100 balls of light are a full 5,000 points. Can this solar energy be maintained in this state all the time? The blonde girl leaned half of her body on Liang Yue's body at this time, gently stroking the ball of light with one hand, her bright eyes flashing a few times, and then she asked him this. It probably can't. The preservation method for this kind of thing is also a bit special. Once it's taken out, it will dissipate after a while. As soon as he finished speaking, the ball of light in his hand seemed to be responding to his instructions, and with a pop, it instantly collapsed, turning into specks of light like fireflies in the dark night. Carrying a faint yellow glow, they scattered in all directions by the thousands for a time. The entire block was illuminated by this radiance. This operation is okay. The system is finally starting to be a little reliable. Glancing at the blonde girl who was now lying on his shoulder, her eyes sparkling like water, looking at the light spots all over the sky with a look of intoxication, Liang Yue suddenly curved the corner of his mouth, and a charming smile appeared on his face. Therefore, taking advantage of the romantic and touching scene in front of him, he then secretly discussed with this royal noblewoman about where they would go tonight. Then, the two fell into an argument. No. I absolutely disagree with you leaving alone. After what happened tonight, how can I put my mind at ease? HMPH, do you think I don't know what you're up to? Of course, I want to protect you. HMPH, think about it. Since those 4 vampires could come here to ambush us, they must have already dealt with your bodyguards beforehand, or at least temporarily incapacitated them. Now that those 4 vampires have been eliminated, they are obviously not the mastermind behind this incident. What's his name? Viscount Carl. Oh right. Viscount Carl is the mastermind. He might send people to catch you again later. In this situation, how can I let you leave alone? Then where do you think I should go? The blonde girl's beautiful face was slightly lowered at this time, her pair of crystal clear big eyes staring straight at someone's righteous and seemingly boyfriend-like face. Elizabeth didn't answer this time, but remained in her previous posture, pouting her lips and looking at him with a half-smile. Liang Yue didn't show any weakness at this time either, lowering his head to meet the girl's gaze. After a long time, a hint of shyness appeared in the depths of the blonde girl's eyes, and she bit her pink lips and looked away. He just as someone thought that his plan had succeeded and he was about to reap the rewards, the roar of a top-notch car suddenly came from far and near, speeding towards them. Buzz squeak, accompanied by a short and harsh friction sound. A cool, treasure blue sports car stopped on the street next to the two of them. Liang Yue subconsciously protected the girl beside him, but unexpectedly, the girl didn't appreciate it at this time, and directly twisted her body, taking the initiative to walk towards the sports car. Soon, the car door opened, and a dignified woman in a purple evening dress stepped out of the driver's seat. This woman was probably about the same age as Aunt Liu, looking to be in her 30s, tall, with a graceful figure, and her long, light golden hair was coiled behind her head. Standing there, an elegant aura rose spontaneously. Aunt Lena, Elizabeth called out to the other party, and then threw herself into the woman's arms. You must be Liang Yue. Eileen mentioned you to me before. I'm sorry to interrupt your date today, but I think it's time for her to go home now. The woman's voice was very gentle, with a magnetic charm, but it also made it impossible to refute. What else could Liang Yue say at this time? He spread his hands and then politely said to the other party, "Hello, Ms. Lena. I'm relieved that you've come. Elizabeth, she should indeed go home now." After exchanging a few pleasantries, Aunt Lena sat back in the driver's seat, while the blonde girl winked at Liang Yue, a slight smile on her lips, and gracefully turned to walk towards the passenger seat. Hey, wait a minute. Liang Yue suddenly remembered something at this time, and reached out to call out to Elizabeth, who had just opened the car door. What's wrong? The blonde girl heard this and looked up at him. This is a gift I prepared for you. I originally wanted to give it to you at dinner, but now, it can only be like this. Saying that, Liang Yue took out a black wooden box inlaid with the gold filigree patterns from behind him, and then looked at her with a smile. As soon as Elizabeth saw it, she immediately ran over from the car, took the wooden box from his hand with watery eyes, and then tiptoed and lightly kissed him on the lips. See you at school. Chapter 114. Lotus Step Shake. On the way, Elizabeth leaned softly against the leather sofa behind her, her face full of interest as she fiddled with the black wooden box Liang Yue had given her. From the carvings and inlays to the materials used, she examined everything carefully. She hummed a little tune unconsciously, the joy in her eyes impossible to hide. Seeing this, Aunt Lena, who was driving, curved her lips into a smile and then said softly, "Aren't you going to open it and take a look? Your little boyfriend seems to have put a lot of thought into this gift." Liang Yue's gift, of course, took a lot of his effort. Leaving aside everything else, the black wooden box itself was a valuable item. It was made of a whole piece of ebony, the surface polished to a glossy shine, the edges of the corners inlaid with the gold filigree, and a lotus flower, elegant and upright, was subtly carved in the center of the box. Even in the Qing Dynasty imperial palace, which possessed the entire country, it would be considered one of the top jewelry boxes. Liang Yue, this guy, happened to be passing by an internal affairs office in the imperial city that specialized in making various jewelry for the harem. Then he conveniently snatched a batch of jewelry made by those highly skilled craftsmen. With a soft click, the blonde girl opened the clasp of the box, and the lid sprang open, revealing the contents. Inside it was a pair of silver lotus hairpins, elegantly identified in shape, and under the illumination of the car's lights, even the two women who were accustomed to seeing all kinds of top jewelry couldn't help but hold their breath. In the center of the silver lotus flower, there was also inlaid a piece of warm Hessian jade, the just right carving, embellishing the flower shape even more vividly. 3 tassels were strung together with tiny Eastern pearls, The ends occasionally finished with round pearls. Aunt Lena, who was beside her, simply parked the sports car on the side of the road, reached out and took one of the hairpins from the jewelry box, and began to praise it with a serious expression. "How is it, Auntie? These hairpins must be very valuable, right? This kind of ornament is called a baiyao, which means that it sways with the wearer's steps. It is said to be a kind of head ornament that began to be popular in the Song dynasty in ancient China. The pair he gave you is mainly made of platinum, supplemented by yellow jade and eastern pearls, which are the most precious and auspicious in Chinese culture. In addition, this is a pair of pure handmade products. It adopts the ancient Chinese court production techniques, which have now been lost, so in terms of value, it should be the top kind, because it can't be bought now." "Wow. Is it so rare? How did you know, Auntie?" "My cousin's family once participated in the war of plunder against China, and their family retained many of the spoils of war at that time. This kind of baiyao was my great-grandmother's favorite head ornament when she was young. However, the few pieces that their family obtained are not as good as yours." As she said that, Ms. Lena looked in the rearview mirror and put the two head ornaments on the hair on the side of her head with a charming smile on her face. She shook them gently to watch, but in the end, she took them off and put them back in the jewelry box. "My hair color is too white. It is not suitable for head ornaments made of platinum. Your little boyfriend obviously chose it specifically for you. It looks just right when worn on pure gold hair, hee." After returning home, Liang Yue didn't delay any longer and directly flashed into the stronghold world. At this time, he was in a somewhat restless mood. After a complicated heavy physical labor and a thorough sweat, he slowly calmed down. The construction of the village in front of him was very time-consuming. Originally, this guy estimated in his mind that the cause that could be completed in 1 or 2 days would eventually cost him another week. Fully automatic comprehensive weaving machine, a mechanical product from a certain technological world. After putting in the corresponding basic materials, it can weave almost any finished fabric. The selling price is 500 points. Emerald, from the game world of Don't Starve, an alchemical material. The inside of the gem contains a trace of magical creation magic. The selling price is 100 points. The above two items are the newly refreshed products in the system store in the past week for Liang Yue. These two things are naturally not powerful auxiliary props, but they themselves have their own unique functions. It's not for anything else. When he was in the world of the new legend of Shaolin, this guy once stripped off a body armor with amazing defensive power from AO. By later, in Shanhaiguan, after the authentication of many martial arts people, it was finally confirmed that the material of that armor seemed to be really woven with a special silkworm thread. It is said that it is a unique silkworm only found in the Yunnan Gizhou Plateau, which feeds on various metal minerals and is very rare. Once discovered, it will almost immediately be secretly collected by the locals, and many martial arts masters and dignitaries can't get it even if they want to. After Liang Yue heard this statement from everyone, he no longer had any ideas about collecting this kind of silkworm. Who knows? The speaker is unintentional. The listener is intentional. At that time, the martial arts people gathered in Shanhaiguan were all there to resist the Qing army outside the customs, but their origins were indeed a bit complicated. In addition to the disciples of the major martial arts sects, there were also many masters from the warlord forces in various places, and since Liang Yue drove the entire Manchu upper ruling class back to their old home in the northeast with his own strength, his status has always been very special. Especially those forces who are determined to dominate the imperial industry and compete in the Central Plains have also been wooing him overtly and secretly. Unfortunately, this guy has always been unmoved. However, when Liang Yue expressed his demand for this special silkworm in front of a group of martial arts people, the warlords distributed in various places finally realized that their opportunity had come. In about a month or so, more than 100 of these exotic silkworms, which were extremely cherished in the eyes of many martial arts dignitaries, were successively sent by various forces. There were even thousands of young eggs and silk cocoons of this kind of silkworm, not to mention Liang Yue, even the old abbot of Shaolin in Shanhaiguan, Chen Jinan, the head of the Heaven and Earth Society, the top master Hong Ziguan, and many Jianghu celebrities present were stunned. Then, under the enthusiasm, Liang Yue could only reluctantly accept it with a smile. Needless to say, the reason why this guy bought this weaving machine product now is naturally to weave all the silk cocoons into finished fabrics, and then use them later. Chapter 115. I need Zerg. System, I want to submit the task. The village construction one. Standing on the tall library tower, Liang Yue overlooked the efforts he had put in over these past few days, admiring them with great interest, hands on his hips, before speaking in his minding. After detection, This time the Stronghold World upgrade task, the beginning of civilization construction, has been completed. Host, do you need to submit the task immediately? Wait a second, system, I want to know what equal distribution means in the task rewards. Subconsciously opening his task panel, Liang Yue read through the village construction task again from beginning to end, only then finding a somewhat unfamiliar term. His attention had previously been mostly focused on the 10 villager slots, as they were related to his promises and preferences. As for this so-called equal distribution, although Liang Yue had seen it, he hadn't thought about it deeply. Equal distribution is to use a method that affects the rules of the Stronghold World to distribute the animals and plants collected by the host in the previous 2 tasks in a regular manner. During the distribution, the number of original species in the Stronghold World will also be appropriately reduced, and the speed of species reproduction and growth will be accelerated, in order to construct a simple ecological cycle system for the world and ensure the diverse development of species within the Stronghold World. Except for the various animals and plants raised or planted by the host in the personal base, all species in other areas are within the scope of this equal distribution. Wow, this function is very powerful. But come to think of it, system, you mentioned building a simple ecological cycle system. Can it be established just with a batch of animals and plants I brought in? Don't you need some bugs or something? After listening to the system's words, Liang Yue's mind raced for a moment, and he thought about many things in a short period of time. For example, in the original Mac world, the creature at the very bottom of the food chain is probably the chicken. However, due to their small number and sufficient living space, chickens can sustain their lives by eating grass and pecking at wheat seeds in the grass. But after the previous animal and plant collection task, the Stronghold World has begun to become lively under Liang Yue's deliberate creation. The bottom-level species of the food chain, in terms of land alone, have already dropped from chickens all the way down to bullfrogs and stone frogs, which are amphibians. These frog species are different from the former, which is an omnivorous species. They eat bugs. Mosquitoes, flies, moths, and various flying insects are the food on their menu. To be honest, when Liang Yue completed the animal part of the species diversity task, he sincerely thought that his next Stronghold World upgrade task would be to collect various insects or something. He never expected that the system would play a cross-domain development game with him, heading straight to the beginning of civilization and the construction of villages. Now it's about building some kind of species ecological cycle. But how can you build it without bugs? Host, do you want to submit the task immediately? Well, I'll wait a little longer. Leaving the Stronghold World with a heavy heart, Liang Yue returned to his home in reality, casually turned on the TV, and sat down on the sofa, pondering the introduction of insects. I'm very clear-headed now, and my spirit is very healthy. I'm Tony Stark, so I have a major decision to announce. That is, I now formally announce that Stark Industries will indefinitely close the Weapons Technology Research and Development and Production Departments. Tony Stark escaped from the hands of terrorists. This is the biggest news in the United States, and even the entire world, in recent days. As for this largest arms supplier in the United States announcing the closure of the group's internal weapons department, Liang Yue, who knew the plot well, had already expected it and was not surprised. And according to Liang Yue's own estimation, 2 months is enough for this Marvel World CW hero to build the Mark I armor for temporary self-rescue and return to this land of freedom. Then next, it's time for this Iron Man to officially debut. His bald uncle Obadiah will also be eager to seize the portable arc reactor's benefits. It won't be long before he makes a desperate move to snatch it, and is finally counter-killed. Iron Man, Liang Yue, who knew the ins and outs of this very individual superhero's life, admired Tony Stark quite a bit. Although he was a bit mouthy and had various minor flaws, he was the most reliable one at critical moments. His body is full of human charm. Now is the very beginning of this Iron Man's rise, the most critical moment of his life's turning point. Therefore, even Liang Yue was considering in his heart whether he should go over to help him and establish a revolutionary friendship in advance or something. However, this idea only stayed in his mind for a moment before being completely discarded by him. You need to know that at this time, Stark Industries headquarters is still in Los Angeles, although it was later moved to New York. That was after Stark and Obadiah's Ironmonger fight, which eventually detonated the large arc reactor. In the group's headquarters, Los Angeles is located in California, near the sea, and California is in the southeast corner of the West Coast. New York, where Liang Yue is currently located, is in the northeast corner of the United States, and is not far from the Great Lakes region near the border. The two places are almost diagonally opposite each other, drawing the longest straight line across the entire U.S. mainland. Leaving aside personal feelings and self-esteem, asking Liang Yue to cross such a long distance, go to the door with a slap, and then squat around Stark Industries just waiting for the moment when Obadiah drives the ironmonger to go berserk. To send him a bullet, this kind of thankless thing is simply too low. Liang Yue would only go and be a fool if he was too idle. Then let's wait and see. Anyway, he has the protagonist's halo. He drove the Mark I, such a clumsy mech, and then plunged headfirst into the desert from 100 meters high, and still didn't die in comparison. The battle with Ironmonger is just a small scene now. I should think more about introducing insects. While the weather is still not too cold and the insects are still having a carnival, I have to find more food for the animals in the stronghold world first of all. Dung beetles. It seems that this kind of insect must be there. In addition to helping decompose animal feces, it consumes almost nothing. Similarly, various earthworms must also be there. Then there are mosquitoes and flies. Although these two kinds of insects are annoying, they are an indispensable food source at the bottom of the food chain. There are also dragonflies, butterflies, spiders, beetles, cicadas, fireflies, snails, etc. Home snails seem to be edible. Then there are bees. Yes, bees. Although the McWorld doesn't need these little things to spread pollen, who wouldn't want to eat honey? After that, introduce some mealworms or something. Speaking of which, should I also add some locusts? With this kind of thing, there will be no shortage of food, right? But after having locusts, various scorpions or something, forget it. This thing is too risky. I just need to maintain the ecological chain in the stronghold world without collapsing. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, Pure Fool Style Operation. Mixed Seeds X100, from the world of Stardew Valley. Plant them on the ground and they can randomly grow crops from any season, or wild-picked fruits, limited to Stardew Valley species price. 300 points. A sword with a mother's aura, from the world of Castlevania, Symphony of the Night, a cherished item of Alucard, the son of the legendary Vampire King price. 1000 points. Universal bullets X30, from a certain fantasy sci-fi world, can be equipped on any firearm for shooting. These bullets possess excellent penetrating power price. 100 points. Unconsciously, another week had passed for Liang Yue. This was a busy period because in addition to dealing with various daily affairs on campus, interpersonal relationships, and pop quizzes, this guy also had to take the time to capture various insect species in daily life. Fortunately, the work of collecting insects was not difficult. Ants, cicadas, spiders, earthworms, snails, mosquitoes, flies, etc., were everywhere in this season. When Liang Yue focused his attention on these species, they were almost ubiquitous very easily. This guy gathered all the species he had been paying attention to beforehand. One afternoon on a day off, Liang Yue even drove to a farm in the suburbs, where he bought a beehive with a young queen bee that had just been separated from the swarm. Then, on the way back, he also caught 2 dragonflies and butterflies from a small river. At this time, Liang Yue was once again standing on the top floor of the library pagoda, looking down at the village below with his arms folded, a hint of anticipation on his face. System, I want to submit the mission, Ling. After detection, the current settlement world upgrade mission, the beginning of civilization, construction, is completed. Host, do you want to submit the mission immediately? Submit. The cattle and sheep leisurely lowered their heads to graze, and even a hen in the chicken coop seemed to be about to lay an egg, squatting in a pile of dry grass and clucking. In contrast, the world outside the light was now a scene of great change. Rounds of sun and moon constantly alternated overhead, swish 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 like running horse lanterns, and the frequency of alternation was getting faster and faster. Day and night were constantly rotating, as easily as a naughty child in the room. The distant coastline was constantly rising and falling, and the layers of waves were like constantly beating the beach in various postures. The changes in the hills and woods on the other side were much more obvious. Almost at the first moment the light rose, the original dense forest was instantly removed by half, replaced by seedlings of various forms. As the sun and moon in the sky continued to alternate, Liang Yue watched them grow stage by stage. The originally somewhat empty mountain forest was being filled up at an extremely fast speed. However, in terms of species, it had become diverse and exceptionally rich, no longer the monotonous forest of oak and cypress that it had been before. In addition to various rare tree species and fruit trees, low shrubs also occupied the bottom space of the hills. Various flowers and berries grew luxuriantly together, their branches and leaves waving, as if waving at him. After a while, it became a scene of dappled light and shadows. Above the sky, there were occasionally birds flying past, but most of them were fleeting, so fast that if you didn't look carefully, you would have thought they were shooting stars. Liang Yue was now standing on the high open-air roof of the library, watching all these changes with a face full of novelty and shock in his heart. In addition to marveling at the magic of the system and the mysteries of the world's rules, there was also a faint sense of envy. Liang Yue wanted to immerse himself in it, to comprehend some truths and rules from this magnificent scene. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he tried, observed, meditated, and released his spirit, he could not comprehend even half of the wonders within. No way, this method is too advanced. I can't find any clues. After winking at the world outside the light, and even trying to cast an observation spell, only to reap a head full of sweat, Liang Yue finally chose to give up. System, how do I use the villager slots? As soon as his voice fell, a light blue screen popped up in front of him. At the top of the screen, there were two drop-down table-style templates, one on the left and one on the right. The left one was labeled Apocalypse of the Academy, and the right one was the New Legend of Shaolin. Below the directory, there was a dense display of names and avatars of people from the corresponding worlds. Scanning his gaze, Liang Yue found that most of them were people he had met and knew during his journey. Whether they were friends or foes was not limited, and as long as he was willing, he could swipe his finger on the screen and the list would continue to scroll down. However, most of those appearing at the bottom were strangers, with whom he had almost no interaction. In addition, next to these names and avatars, there was also a small blank square. Liang Yue tried to click it, and a mark was immediately placed in the small square. At the same time, in the lower right corner of the screen, there was also a rectangular button with the word Send Villager Invitation written in a proper printed song typeface. This is too convenient. Liang Yue looked at the screen in front of him, his old face suddenly like he had hemorrhoids. Wanting to complain but unable to find any reason, faced with his selection template that he could understand at a glance, this guy immediately lost any interest in discussing it, casually unchecking the previous checkmark. After some fiddling, he adjusted the table on the screen back to its original appearance. First of all, there's no need to look at the world of New Legend of Shaolin. Anyway, I don't have anyone I particularly care about in that plane. Hongdao, who looks 7 or 8 parts similar to Goddess Chu, is a good choice. Unfortunately, I've never had much interaction with her, the old abbot of Shaolin Temple. Forget it. Am I going to ask him to chant scriptures for me? Thinking of this, Liang Yue subconsciously twitched a corner of his mouth, and then completely focused his attention on the Apocalypse of the Academy table menu. Sure enough, for a normal man, beauty is the most attractive thing. Busuji Masiko Juchuan Shizuka. Let's start with these two, and then see what happens with the others. After clicking the small squares behind the names of the two girls, Liang Yue heavily pressed his finger on the Send Villager Invitation button. Chapter 117 Heavy Casualties. Whoosh! In just 5 or 6 seconds, a flash of white light appeared before Liang Yue, accompanied by a gentle breeze, and a familiar figure materialized. Long golden hair, exaggerated body proportions, and a beautiful, fair face. It was none other than Shizuka Miracle. However, the condition of this teacher Shizuka was not good at the moment. Her face was smeared with a lot of dust, her clothes were tattered, with pieces missing here and there, some places stained with blood, and even one of her shoes was gone. As soon as this beauty appeared, she was panting for breath, her expression confused yet somewhat excited. Upon seeing Liang Yue in front of her, her pretty face immediately lit up with surprise. She cheered, opened her arms, and with a fierce ball-carrying tackle, threw herself into his embrace. Liang Yue, I missed you so much. I missed you too. Holding the woman's slender waist, Liang Yue almost immediately smelled a strange, mixed odor emanating from her, a fishy smell, a bloody smell, and the stench of sweat. Upon closer inspection, the clothes on teacher Shizuka seemed to be covered with a layer of hard salt stains. Looks like you guys haven't been doing well lately. Has it been a long time since I left your side? Tucking the hair in front of her forehead, Liang Yue couldn't help but ask with some heartache as he looked at Shizuka Miracle's eyes, which were gentle but tinged with fatigue. Yeah, we've had a bit of a hard time lately. It hasn't been long since you left, Liang Yue, only a little over a month, but Shizuka has lost some weight from being hungry these past few days. Looking at the woman subconsciously stroking her belly, Liang Yue smiled softly, and with a wave of his sleeve, he took an apple from the space and handed it over. Eat some fruit to tide you over, and I'll prepare a delicious meal for you later. After speaking, Liang Yue looked around, then subconsciously frowned. Why hasn't Siko come over yet? That's right, Liang Yue, hurry and call them over too. We were in a moment of crisis before, surrounded by zombies. Hearing this, Shizuka Miracle immediately jumped out of his arms, grabbed his arm, and said anxiously, "Wait a moment." With a thought, the light blue screen popped up again. Shizuka Miracle, who was beside him, was also leaning on his side at this time, holding the apple, looking over with a curious expression. "System, can the villagers also see your existence? Only if you wish it, that's good." "What's wrong with this? This is the state when a character dies. I'll go." Hearing this, Liang Yue quickly took his finger and clicked on the light screen repeatedly. "Saya Takagi, Rie Miyamoto, Rikaminami, Yuriko Takagi, Amal Sensiko Senpai." Again, just as Liang Yue was ticking off the few portraits, one after another familiar names dimmed in these short few breaths. "Takashi Kimuro, Gon Todo Hirano, Gon Soichiro Takagi, also Gon Kyoko Miyamoto, still there. No wait, why is she also starting to turn black? What? Rie Miyamoto is also gone? Gotta hurry." Although Liang Yue was not on the apocalypse world at this time, it did not prevent him from judging the situation there through the light screen panel. The sudden turn of events startled him, who originally wanted to select a few more names and then send a group message, and he quickly pressed the invitation send button. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In just a second or two, 4 rays of light appeared one after another in front of Liang Yue. Saya Takagi and her mother Yuriko Takagi, Rikaminami, who was Shizuka-sensei's best friend, and Siko Birsujima, panting for breath, her clothes almost soaked in sweat. This Siko-senpai was wearing the soul-absorbing bracelet he had given her before he left on one of her wrists, and she was also wearing Shizuka Miracle's rabbit scout hat on her head, with her goggles covering her eyes in full combat mode. Even as a kendo master, the Murata sword in this senpai's hand was broken, leaving only a section, covered in black blood. Thus, it could be seen how urgent the situation they had faced before was. "What's wrong with you guys?" Shizuka said. "I've only been gone for a little over a month." Looking at the disheveled appearance of the few people at this time, Liang Yue couldn't help but ask, while quickly walking to the nearby gazebo to get a pot of water and a few cups. Father is dead." "What? Kimuro-kun, Hirano-kun, and Mommy and the others were also killed." Liang Yue, "Did Rie and Auntie Miyamoto come too?" "No, you 5 are all the people there are. As for the others, let me see." The light screen popped up in front of him again. Liang Yue quickly fiddled with the table above, and the familiar names in that column had all turned black and gray. After searching carefully, he could only shake his head at the few people with a regretful expression. Immediately, a sense of sorrow began to spread among the crowd. Saya Takagi lay in her mother's arms, crying loudly. As grief-stricken as a child, Rikaminami directly lit a cigarette, took a deep breath, and then went to the side to stand guard. Siko Birsujima and Shizuka Miracle both silently lowered their heads, tears slowly sliding down their cheeks. Of course, Liang Yue was not among these sad people. After all, he was used to seeing life and death, and the number of villager slots in this guy's hands was really limited. There were only 10 in total, and now 5 slots have been used up all at once. Who knows when there will be another opportunity to replenish them. He wasn't even that familiar with Rie Miyamoto and her mother, not to mention Takashi Kimuro, who always had a rebellious protagonist face on. How could Liang Yue expect to have a good relationship with him? It's a pity about the little fatty Todo Hirano, a harmless technical otaku, but if he really spent a villager slot to bring him back, his actual role might not be as good as the old abbot of Shaolin as for Soichiro Takagi. Damn it. After the crowd's mood calmed down, Liang Yue took them to the gazebo, then set up the lava grill, set up the wire mesh, and began to prepare food. After all kinds of fruits, fresh vegetables, milk juice, etc. were put on the table, the attention of the people was obviously diverted, and before long, everyone began to gobble it up. Siko Birsujima was sitting next to Liang Yue at this time. The grilled meat in her plate was cut into small cubes, and after simply sprinkling a layer of black pepper and rose salt, she couldn't resist the hunger in her stomach anymore, and took a fork and put it into her mouth. Liang Yue-kun, is this the world you are in? Yeah, this is considered my private stronghold world. You can think of this place as a transfer station to enter the world I am in. Hearing this, Liang Yue began to explain to Siko-senpai and the others at the table. Speaking of which, after accepting the invitation of the villagers, you should have all received some information in your minds, right? Indeed, it says that we have become villagers or something, and we have to help you manage the village, and there's also a bunch of messy abilities, a bit like your abilities before. Liang Yue, you can chop trees, mine and stuff. Shizuka Miracle, who was on the other side, suddenly came back to her senses at this time, tapped her head, and then replied with a surprised look. Chapter 118 McChronicle. If this ability were purely used for combat, it wouldn't be considered powerful, but it's comprehensive, suitable for wilderness survival, and you can use the toolbox to create various equipment among the information you received. There should also be some synthetic formulas, right? Liang Yue, while holding up his cup, took a big gulp of his homebrewed beer, then looked at the people beside him and asked. The response he received was all five of them nodding their heads vigorously used these synthetic formulas more as he spoke. Liang Yue himself took a small wooden cube and reassembled a toolbox in his inventory, placing it on the ground. Then, with a flip of his sleeve, he took out his treasured limited edition 36 grid toolbox and placed it beside the other one. This stronghold world we are in is not a complete plane. Various physical laws and natural resources are not comprehensive either. The only minerals are gold and iron, and a few gems. They can be used to forge various weapons and armor. The hides dropped by animals can also be made into leather armor. You can synthesize these according to the formulas. However, this stronghold world doesn't have cotton or raw materials like silk. Some time ago, I imported some from the outside, and I also got a batch of ready-made fabrics. After experimenting, I found that textiles like cotton cloth and silk can also be made into various clothes through formulas and this toolbox also. The toolbox you synthesize on the toolbar of your personal page only has 9 grids. This one here is the result of me upgrading it several times through other means. It has 36 grids inside, requiring more materials to consume, but the quality of the various clothes and weapons synthesized will be better. You can study this yourself later. As for building various houses, I won't say much. Anyway, the specific steps are like building blocks. As long as you have patience, you can build any kind of building. Only after completing this village did I have the qualifications to pull you from the original world. Oh, I'm a little tipsy. Hey, what's going on outside? It looks a bit abnormal, and those two flickering in the sky, are they the sun and the moon? After having their fill of food and drink, Sayatakaji, who had recovered a lot, took advantage of the fact that everyone around her was studying the toolbox and came to Liang Yue's side, pointing to the world outside the light and asking, that's another reward after completing the village construction task. I introduced a lot of animals and plants into this stronghold world some time ago. Now the system is using the power of time rules to completely integrate those animals and plants into this world. The purpose is to build a normal ecological circle. After saying that, Liang Yue's face suddenly moved closer to this woman, sniffing her with his nostrils. What do you want to do? Seeing this, Sayatakaji subconsciously took a step back, holding her chest with both hands, looking at him with a slightly flushed face. Oh sorry, it seems I overlooked something before. I should have taken you to wash up first. Speaking of this, Liang Yue turned his head and waved to the people beside him, then continued. There's a bathroom I built in the village below. And a hot spring. If you want to, how about a hot spring? That's great. Did you build that too, Liang Yue? Yes, it's the kind of artificial hot spring, with a magma lake underneath. A layer of iron blocks on top, and then a layer of stones on the ground. The water temperature of the hot spring is probably always maintained at 40 to 50 degrees. Is that okay? Of course. As for clothes, I didn't prepare them for you in advance. That's simple. Just trouble Liang Yue-kun to provide some cotton cloth and the like. At this time, it was Sayatakaji's mother, Yuriko Takaji, who spoke. This beautiful woman seemed to have a strong ability to adapt to new things. After some exploration, she had successfully created a gray cotton dress in his 36 grid toolbox. This was something that Liang Yue had not even done before. Of course, that's no problem. Alright, there are also dyes in this world. I have stored a lot before. If 3 primary colors are enough, you can mix any color. It's also very simple to use. Just click on it in the storage space. As he spoke, Liang Yue led everyone downstairs, passing by the bookshelves in the library. This guy did not forget to remind the 5 people beside him the books on the second floor are martial arts manuals that I scavenged from other worlds. There are not many, only about 100. You can practice them when you have nothing to do. If you don't understand anything, just ask me. The books on the first floor are ancient Chinese classics, histories, and philosophical works, most of which have been lost. If you want to practice the martial arts upstairs, you will inevitably have to browse through the classics here first. After leaving the library, Liang Yue led the 5 women to the village warehouse. This is a capricious square building, characterized by the absence of windows, only a door. The whole body is stone, and the area is very large. Even compared to the previous library, it is not inferior. After opening the door, rows of boxes appeared in front of everyone. Following the signs beside the aisle, Liang Yue led them to the storage area of various basic materials. After several months of development, Liang Yue had indeed saved a lot of family wealth for himself at this time, like gold ingots, iron ingots, diamonds, redstone, coal balls, stones, sand, glass, wood, and even soil blocks. Liang Yue had stacked them in groups in the storage boxes in front of him. The other items such as cotton cloth and silk were the spoils that this guy had scavenged from the mansions of various Manchukuo dignitaries in the new Shaolin Five Ancestors world and ancient society, in addition to precious metals and legal tender such as gold, silver, and copper coins. Things like satin, cotton brocade, silk cloth, etc., were also very important property and wealth in society. Even to some extent, the value of these cloths was much more stable than that of ancient currency. Therefore, in ordinary noble families, there would also be a special warehouse to store a large number of cloths, which could be used to make clothes and also to prevent unforeseen needs. And Liang Yue did not spare those Tartar dignitaries and Han traders when he ravaged the capital before. After walking down hundreds of such mansions and residences, the number of various cloths stored in this warehouse at this time may not be less than those gold ingots and iron ingots if it is only used to make various clothes for the 5 women beside him. I am afraid that it will not be used up in 10 years. Chapter 119 Ancient Fruit. While they were taking care of personal hygiene and soaking in the hot springs, Liang Yue didn't waste any time either. He took his swords and began practicing in a deliberately cleared training ground in the village recently. Although Liang Yue had been focusing on the construction of the village and the combination and collection of various insects, he hadn't neglected his training. Although he hadn't experienced any sudden enlightenment like when he was practicing the mixed yuan skill, his personal attribute panel data had been steadily improving under the system's observation. Liang Yue identity, acquired martial artist inner force, 1241 strength, 69 agility, 79 constitution, 77 energy, 87 bloodline, human, sealed, talents, vigorous spirit, affinity cultivation methods, golden bell cover, mixed yuan skill, Hangshan swordplay, 1 reed crossing the river golden bell cover level, 3 current level, 3 defensive skill inherited from Bodhidharma, the founder of Shaolin, with the effect of refining the body, strengthening the body, and enhancing the defender's physical defense skill effect. Defense plus 527 strength plus 20 agility plus 15 constitution plus 18 overall defense plus 5% proficiency. 1039 unmixed yuan skill level. 410 current level. 4 an authentic Taoist inner cultivation method, one of the 9 skills of Mount Hui. Its roots can be traced back to the Quanzhan Taoist lineage skill effect. Inner force plus 1241 strength plus 8 agility plus 6 energy plus 30 physical, magical defense plus 315 elemental resistance plus 16 proficiency. 2587 5000 Hangshan sword play level. 310 current level. 3 a rare sword play in the Buddhist lineage that aims to kill, known for its fierce moves and strange techniques skill effect. Sword attack power plus 376 sword accuracy plus 8% attack speed plus 8% sword attack power plus 3% proficiency. 472 1001 reed crossing the river level. 310 current level. 3a lightness skill passed down by Bodhidharma, the founder of Shaolin. It is said that when cultivated to the highest level, one can cross rivers and lakes with a single reed skill effect. Jumping power plus 8% movement speed plus 8% agility plus 12 constitution plus 5 mid-air reacceleration speed plus 5%, requires inner force, proficiency. 416 1000 After immersing himself in practice on the training ground for more than an hour, Liang Yue finally came back to his senses and realized that the 5 women who had gone to the bathhouse to bathe and soak in the hot springs had already dressed neatly and come to the side. Watching his practice with great interest, it seemed they had been there for a while. Seeing this, Liang Yue quickly wiped the sweat from his forehead, and then led the 5 women around the village. This is the residential area. When I built it, I planned it according to the classical Chinese 2-courtyard layout. I originally wanted to play with site-specific landscape design. Later, I found it a bit troublesome, so I built them all in one style. If you are not satisfied, you can modify it yourself. I have built a total of 10 such 2-courtyard houses. You can choose whichever one you want to live in. As soon as Liang Yue finished speaking, Saya Takagi next to him, her pink twin tails, which were still a little wet, and then looked at Yuriko Takagi beside her, with a bit of hope in her voice. Mom, let's live together. Hearing this, Yuriko Takagi's eyes flickered, and then she looked at her daughter with a calm expression and replied, let's live separately. You should learn to live independently. Besides, this village is not big. Even if something happens, you can respond in time. Oh okay then Liang Yue-chan, which courtyard do you live in? Shizuka Mariko next to her hugged Liang Yue's arm at this time, and asked with some expectation me? I can sleep with a bed. I haven't been sleeping much lately. After nightfall, I've been staying on the roof of the library, practicing the mixed yuan skill. Hearing this, Liang Yue answered truthfully, do you have to practice at night too? It turns out that Liang Yue-kun has been working so hard lately. No wonder I felt that I was no match for you at all when I saw you practicing swordsmanship before. Hearing his words, Sikobir Sujima looked at him with bright eyes, and a hint of heat faintly rose from the depths of her eyes. This is mainly related to my physical fitness. Now, in terms of physical fitness, I have surpassed the limit of ordinary people by at least 3 times. Furthermore, the mixed yuan skill that I practice is an authentic Taoist inner cultivation method, which itself has the effect of strengthening the foundation and cultivating the vitality and deep meditation. After practicing to a certain level, replacing sleep with practice will actually make your energy better and better. There is such a magical skill, yes, but for you, the most important thing to practice now is the golden bell cover secretly passed down from Buddhism. As long as you practice it properly, and with the assistance of medicinal baths, this skill can at least double your physical fitness in 2 or 3 months. But unfortunately, while explaining the problems in cultivation to the women beside him, Liang Yue also unknowingly led them to the planting area of the village. This is a 3-dimensional agricultural garden planting area. When designing it, Liang Yue also made full use of the gameplay and rules of the MIG world, using the layout of multi-story buildings as the main base for the plantation. In this planting building with a single-story area of more than 1,000 square meters, what is planted on the ground is naturally mainly fruit trees with tall plants. The higher the floor, the smaller the volume of the plants, and the rarer the varieties of various fruits, vegetables, and spices. In addition, in the underground part of this planting building, Liang Yue also additionally opened up 2 underground planting gardens, specializing in cultivating some mushrooms, fungi, or species that cannot be exposed to light. The fruit trees, vegetables, spices, etc. here almost include all the mainstream species on the market. You can eat whatever you want in the future, but if there is less, pay attention to replanting it. Why do these crops here look a little different? These are plants from 2 other worlds. They are a bit magical in nature, but they are not too magical. Try not to eat these. After they mature, pay attention to collecting them, then pay attention to replanting them at any time, especially those eggplants, pumpkins, dragon fruits, etc., that only grow 1 fruit on a plant. In addition to being eaten as vegetables, they themselves also have good healing and blood-returning effects. Of course, you can use them however you want after you have stored a lot of them. Liang Yue-chan, what is this plant? It looks so special. Wow, this one is amazing. I was lucky before and only got 1 out of 100 random seeds. It's called the ancient fruit, and it's the most precious variety in its world. However, the specific effect is not clear yet. I only know that the wine brewed from it is very expensive. Well, it is said to be very delicious. System, regarding the villagers, shouldn't I or they have some additional permissions? While everyone was still lingering in the fruit forest and fields, Liang Yue casually picked a bunch of grapes from the vines next to him, then leaned against the stone wall behind him, and asked the system about the topic he was concerned about. In the current state, the villagers can only be responsible for helping the host maintain and defend the construction of the village. They cannot go to the real world, nor can they go to the heavens and worlds. The villagers enjoy all the basic abilities of the game characters. The host can share one of his skills or abilities with the villagers for use, and can also obtain a temporary skill from the villagers. Get a temporary skill? Can I get one from everyone? Hearing this, Liang Yue's eyes suddenly flashed with light. The host can only have 1 temporary skill permission from all the villagers. If you want to change skills, you must also cancel the previously selected ability. Then how can I improve this permission? Including letting them go to the real world, and also play in other heavens and worlds. Is it the next stage of the Stronghold World upgrade mission? With the host's current strength, he is not qualified to start the next stage of the upgrade mission. Okay. Chapter 120 Temporary Skills. When you go to sleep tonight, be careful not to dismantle the torches. You should have been reminded in the information you received, right? Once the light is gone, monsters will spawn in this world, not just zombies, but also skeleton archers, creepers, and other self-destructing monsters. In some ways, this world is actually more dangerous than your original world at this moment. The world outside the village is still undergoing rapid day and night cycles. However, although the light in the world is constantly fluctuating, Liang Yue can still know that it is evening in the normal stronghold world through the system's precise electronic clock. After greeting the 5 newly arrived women, he went to the top floor of the library to continue his cultivation of the Hunyuan Gangas for Sayatakaji and her mother, Sikobir Sujima, Shizuka Marikawa, and Rikuminami. They were newcomers after all, although Liang Yue hasn't asked yet. They must have just experienced a difficult battle in the apocalypse world, exhausted physically and mentally. They needed a good night's sleep after eating and cleaning themselves. However, Liang Yue obviously overlooked that, apart from rest, a sense of security was also what Shizuka-sensei and the others desperately needed. When Liang Yue stood on the roof, calmed down, and officially entered a state of cultivation, a sound of footsteps came from downstairs. After about 15 minutes immediately afterwards, Sayatakaji, Shizuka Marikawa, Rikuminami, and the other 5 women emerged from the stairwell one by one. Their gazes towards him varied, but their pretty faces, each with its own unique features, were all tinged with a bit of embarrassment. "What's wrong?" Liang Yue asked, turning his head in surprise while still maintaining the Hunyuan stance. "Well, I feel a little uneasy. After all, according to that system, there are only a few of us in this world." Shizuka gets a little restless. If she can't see Liang Yue-chan, Shizuka Marikawa stepped forward and looked at him with a matter-of-fact expression. "Can we borrow a place here? We definitely won't disturb Liang Yue-kun's cultivation," Sikobir Sujima said. "At this time I neglected that. When I first came to this world, I don't think I slept well on the first night either. By the second night, I simply dug a hole in the ground, then I sealed all the passages, and only then could I barely sleep. If you also feel uncomfortable, build a room here and sleep inside. I'll cultivate here and guard the door for you." "Thank you, Liang Yue. I'm still a little confused about the situation we're troubling you, Liang Yue-kun. It's okay, relax a little, and treat this place like your own home. Then let's build a house here. It doesn't need to be too big, just like a school dormitory, just enough to fit a bed through a simple door." Liang Yue could clearly hear the hushed voices of the women inside the room, but his heart was calm at this time, and his body remained in a state of cultivation. But as the chatting in the room grew quieter and quieter, and light snores and even breathing began to sound one after another, he himself began to wander off, his body still maintaining the same cultivation rhythm as before, without any disorder. But Liang Yue's mind was already elsewhere. Villager, Sikobir Sujima. Strength 13, agility 17, constitution 13, energy 14, abilities, basic swordsmanship proficiency, Busujima family swordsmanship. Villager, Shizuka Marikawa. Strength 7, agility 7, constitution 11, energy 12, abilities, basic medical skills, medical care specialization. Villager, Sayatakaji. Strength 7, agility 8, constitution 10, energy 15, abilities, rational analysis, learning talent. Villager, Yuriko Takaji. Strength 9, agility 11, constitution 10, energy 12, abilities, basic marksmanship, financial management. Villager, Rikuminami. Strength 12, agility 12, constitution 14, energy 13, abilities, intermediate marksmanship proficiency, gun proficiency, mechanical modification. Is Senpei's agility attribute so strong? She hasn't cultivated any special secret methods, but a full 17 points of agility, that's already close to the limit of ordinary humans, right? When Liang Yue saw Sikobir Sujima's personal attribute interface, he was shocked because according to this numerical expression, even when Liang Yue was in the apocalypse world, he didn't seem to be as strong as this senpai, and the reason why he was able to show such a fierce combat power was only because he had ample ammunition supplies and the aura of some characters. However, after Liang Yue carefully pondered it in his heart, he quickly let it go. After all, in the original manga and anime, Sikobir Sujima was indeed a top-notch swordsman from the island country with explosive combat power in the battle with the zombie army. In addition to her fierce attacks and overly agile body, her fighting style was more like an elegant waltz dancer, all kinds of spins, jumps, and then reaping the target's life inadvertently. It gives people the feeling that this senpai is not simply killing zombies, but enjoying the entire battle process. A rare battle maniac, a seed for a swordsman. It's a pity this sister's fighting style doesn't quite match mine, otherwise, borrowing a secret swordsmanship from her temporarily should provide me with a lot of reference space. Then there's Shizuka's medical and healing abilities, which don't seem to need to be considered. You can recover blood just by eating, and there's Snow Lotus ointment in them. While in the current stage, I don't seem to have any unsolvable injuries, right? Sayatakaji's rational analysis, this is not considered, but this young lady's energy attribute is not low. She should be a good seed for a mage. Before Yuriko got married, she was said to be a well-known financial businessman on Wall Street. If she can come to the real world one day, she can help me a lot. Finally, there's Rika Minami's gun proficiency and mechanical modification abilities. The abilities of this big sister are what I need most. My marksmanship is naturally good enough now, but I haven't received proper military training after all. As for the understanding of firearms, in most cases, I just treat guns as consumables. As for the guns themselves, it's enough to kill people. Why bother with so much? Finally, mechanical modification is a good ability and worth learning. However, for the time being, it's better to postpone it and make up for the shortcomings in firearms first. Chapter 121 Shared Skills. When the day and night cycle, which had lasted for an entire night, suddenly stopped, and the time in the sky returned to normal, a brilliant glow began to rise at the end of the coastline. The people in the small house next door finally woke up from their dreams at the same time. Thanks to the effect of the made wool bed after a night of rest, the feeling of exhaustion was completely gone, and the full spirit returned to these 5 women. Then, almost as soon as the skill was added to his body, Liang Yue once again enjoyed the treatment of enlightenment. A large amount of unfamiliar gun knowledge, theory, gun structure and assembly, maintenance, and even a little bit of information flow about the modification of guns and ammunition began to appear out of thin air in his mind. After he digested this information, and driven by curiosity, Liang Yue immediately flew down the tower, ran to the warehouse, and took out a pile of various styles of guns and ammunition from the storage box, and then launched a series of experimental exercises relying on his physical fitness far superior to ordinary people. From the initial unfamiliarity to gradually being able to skillfully disassemble and assemble various guns, it took him less than a quarter of an hour in total. Yo, not bad. I can't tell, but your habit of assembling and using guns, is actually quite similar to mine. Seeing the cold guns placed on the table, Nanlixiang, as a member of the island country's elite special forces, immediately became interested and picked up a Barrett sniper rifle with shining eyes. While operating it skillfully, she didn't forget to tease someone. Looks familiar? That's right, Helly, this ability was originally stripped from you. Liang Yue heard this, and immediately curved the corners of his mouth, chuckled twice, and then continued to fiddle with the gun parts in his hand without raising his head. What are you talking about? Hearing this guy's words, Nanlixiang's movement suddenly stopped, and she looked over with some incomprehension. What I mean is that, as a villager in this village, I can copy a skill from you at will and use it temporarily. Saying that, Liang Yue moved his mind and directly called out Nanlixiang's personal attribute panel, and then pointed to the gun proficiency behind her ability column and said unexpectedly, "You. Damn it. You can actually mobilize our skills so casually? Then, in your eyes, we have no secrets at all? Damn it." Looking at her character panel being fiddled with at will, Nanlixiang's eyes twitched at this time, and she clenched her fist and slammed it on the table, looking at him with an unhappy face. What's so bad about that? Rights and obligations are actually bidirectional. As my villagers, you can also share a skill from me, right? Huh? Is there such a thing? Then, what kind of abilities do you have now? The others had also come to his side at this time. After hearing this guy's words, Takagi Saya immediately asked Liang Yue heard this and didn't say any more nonsense. He moved his mind again and summoned his personal attribute panel, showing it in front of everyone. Wow. So you're already so powerful, Liang Yue-chan. Looking at Liang Yue's panel attributes, teacher Shizuka directly lay on his back with a face full of surprise. The others were also almost the same expression at this time, looking at Liang Yue's 4-dimensional attributes, the lowest of which were more than 60 points. And their hearts were filled with disbelief. Advanced gunmanship proficiency. Why are there 2 skills that haven't been activated yet? Because those are 2 magic skills. I haven't obtained magic power yet. There's actually such a thing, reverse joint grappling technique. I heard that it's a very fierce close combat technique. I wanted to learn it when I was training in the army, but that instructor didn't teach it to me. Is the golden bell cover really that strong? The increase in the 3 attributes of strength, agility, and constitution is actually more than my original physical fitness. Hun Yuan Guang is also very powerful. It can add a lot of energy, and there's also stepping on a reed across the river, movement speed, aerial removement, etc. Wow. So, Liang Yue, do you have any suggestions for us now? Which of your abilities should we choose that is suitable for us? After a burst of chattering discussion, in the end, Takagi Saya, the pink-haired girl, took the initiative to ask the question and asked Liang Yue the key question that depends on your current needs. By the way, I actually have a question for you. and that is, can you understand Chinese characters now? Chinese characters? Are you referring to those books below, and martial arts secrets? That should be easy. After all, our communication with you has never seemed to have any obstacles. There are no obstacles in talking to me. That's because I have a skill given by the system, which is this language proficiency. With it, it's not just the island country language. All languages and characters in all worlds can be automatically converted into Chinese characters that I can understand, and the words I say can also be automatically converted into your language after they reach your ears. Isn't it amazing? Is that so? I'll go get a book to take a look. Hearing this, the color of surprise flashed on the face of Tokushima, and then she immediately turned and ran downstairs. About half a minute later, the senior sister who appeared again had already begun to look preoccupied, and she was holding a Shaolin Temple's Mad Demon Staff technique in her hand. Unexpectedly, you really can't understand it. That's true. I didn't realize it when I was talking to you before, Liang Yue, but now I just remembered that I don't seem to really know Chinese. So Liang Yue, your suggestion is to let us choose this language proficiency skill. Of course, if you can't even understand the words, how can you read books and learn things in the future? But can't we directly share your cultivation techniques? For example, that golden bell cover. Although the cultivation progress is not good, the knowledge on that secret book must be possible. The golden bell cover technique is not difficult to cultivate, and I only got the content of the first 3 levels. You will understand it as long as you explain it a little, but with language proficiency, you can read those books below. It will. But okay, Saya, Liang Yue-kun is right. Don't always think about being lazy. HMPH, fully automatic voice activated camera, a product from a certain technology plane, suitable for land, air, and water use. It has a good solar storage battery inside, with photoelectric conversion and output, and can reach a minimum of balanced use. It adopts a real system camera, cancels the pixel module design, and the lens accuracy can be adjusted arbitrarily within a radius of 10 kilometers. The memory space is 100 YB. The selling price is 1,000 points. Multifunctional iron pickaxe, from the Forager game world, an accidentally extra low-level iron pickaxe. It can be used for chopping trees, mining, breaking rocks, and fighting monsters. The working efficiency is low, the durability is infinite, and it can be upgraded. The selling price is 500 points. Inner Breath Pill, a product from a certain game world. After use, it can get rid of the dependence on the external air environment to a certain extent. The underwater effect is the best, and the medicinal effect can last for 1 hour. The selling price is 300 points. Chapter 122 Invitation from Stark. Soon, another week had passed. During this time, besides living a normal campus life and chatting with Elizabeth every afternoon as usual, Liang Yue would enter the Stronghold world and familiarize his 5 villagers with the surrounding environment. By the way, he also took them to fight monsters and adapt to the survival mode of the McWorld. During the process, Liang Yue and others even discovered an opportunity-type native mine among the mountains and hills behind the village, near a lavender field. In this mine, the density of monsters was significantly higher than in the world above ground, and the danger was also greatly increased. But the resources contained within were far greater than other ordinary pits compared to the most basic McBlock people in the game. Sikobir Sujima, Saya Takagi and the others were obviously stronger at this time, and the equipment on their bodies was synthesized in someone's 36-grid toolbox, which was much more sophisticated than the original crude parts. In addition, the people in the team could also use modern firearms, and Liang Yue, an old hand, was leading the charge. Therefore, although the exploration process of the group experienced some twists and turns, they finally managed to explore all the resource points safely, and also gained a lot of spoils like finished wooden blocks, wooden fences, mine carts, a large number of rails, a large number of finished iron ingots, gold ingots, diamonds, redstone, emeralds, lapis lazuli, a small number of plant seeds, as well as horse armor, saddles and other rare items, etc. In addition, after nightfall, this guy would personally teach the girls around him to practice the golden bell cover. In short, although Liang Yue didn't seem to have experienced many waves during this period, he lived an exceptionally fulfilling life, and his own strength was also improving in an orderly manner. However, just as this guy thought that his natural month would pass smoothly like this, until the next All Heavens experience began. A sudden invitation was personally delivered to him by a familiar fat man. Hello Mr. Liang Yue, I am Mr. Tony Stark's personal bodyguard. You can call me Happy. I am here this time at the request of Mr. Stark to deliver this invitation to you. You are invited to attend the opening party held by this group at Stark Tower. The time is 1 week later to me. An invitation? Excuse me for saying, Mr. Happy, although I have long known Mr. Stark's great name, I have not had the honor to meet Mr. Stark before this. Moreover, as far as I know, the headquarters of the Stark Group seems to be in Los Angeles in a week. The headquarters of the Stark Group will be officially moved to Manhattan, New York. The invitation has this specific address. As for the reason for inviting you, it is due to Mr. Stark's personal preference. So that's how it is. Well, that's it. Please be sure to attend on time, Mr. Liang Yue. Goodbye. Oh, okay. Goodbye. Please wait a moment. Saying that, Liang Yue turned around and quickly walked back to his home, and when he came out again, he had 2 more bottles of wine in his hand. This wine will be given to Mr. Stark as a gift, of course. One of them is for you. Happy wow. Thank you, Liang Yue. Goodbye. Goodbye. Watching this happy director drive away, Liang Yue looked at the wooden invitation in his hand, inlaid with gold thread patterns on the surface, and he was still a little confused in his heart. And it took a while to react. Okay, now you can get involved with a protagonist by writing a novel, The Stark Family. But that's right. After all, that April belongs to Stark. A week later, which is the 4th of next month, this will not delay my work. The time is very ample. Speaking of Tony Stark, Hai-Gen is indeed a genius cursed by knowledge. Now it's only been a little more than half a month since he came back from the Middle East. Right, in such a short period of time, the Mark II and Mark II mechanical armors have been completed. He also killed the enemy within the Stark Group, Obadiah Stane. With this question in his mind, Liang Yue slowly returned home, and then turned on the TV after changing the channel at random. This guy saw Stark holding a small piece of paper in the TV screen, his expression gradually changing from confusion and hesitation to the determined press conference screen. Iron Man. I don't know if Elizabeth, and Aunt Liu and the others will go at that time. The blonde girl is probably the most expensive kind of noble in this area of New York, right, and Aunt Liu, at least she is a socialite and an entrepreneur. Let's make a phone call and ask first. Exploding tag, an explosive charm from the Naruto world that produces explosions and fire damage, with a power roughly equivalent to an ordinary high explosive grenade, and is both concealed and adhesive. The selling price is 200 points. After scanning the system store, this guy directly ignored the last item of this month. At this time, Liang Yue was sitting under the gazebo on the roof of the library, diverting a trace of his mind to pay attention to Sikobir Sujima, Yuriko Takagi and others who were cultivating in the medicinal bath next to him. Most of this guy's attention was now focused on the toolbox in front of him. 36 grid toolbox. Speaking of, should I upgrade this thing again? Although in the next All Heavens world, sharper weapons and equipment may not be of much use, but toolboxes are going to be upgraded sooner or later, right? After returning from the new Shaolin 5 Ancestors world last time, I saved a total of more than 9,000 points. But I bought a lot of things in the mall this month. In addition to this exploding tag, I bought a little of everything else, spending a total of 4,300 points, and now there are more than 5,000 left in my wallet. Item upgrade treasure charm, 1,000 each, then I can buy up to 5. This 36 grid toolbox was smashed out by me using 3 upgrade treasure charms, which means that even if the addition fails now, the worst case scenario is that the box explodes. Then the remaining points are enough for me to create a new one. Well, as the saying goes, wealth comes from risk. That's it. Thinking of this, Liang Yue suddenly spread his 5 fingers, his eyes flickered a few times, and the featureless yellow talisman paper immediately appeared in the palm of his hand. Looking at the square toolbox in front of him, this guy subconsciously took 2 deep breaths at this time, calming the tension in his heart. Then, he threw the upgrade treasure charm on top. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123, Dilapidated Tavern. When the midnight clock struck again, and the slender hand pointed to the new day, the system's prompt also arrived as scheduled. The time for the 3rd trial in the worlds has arrived. Host, do you want to enter immediately? Looking at the 5 pairs of eyes staring at him unblinkingly, Liang Yue waved goodbye to them before confirming in his heart, enter. In an instant, this guy disappeared directly in front of everyone. Command confirmed, randomly selecting plane coordinates. The trial plane the host will enter this time is the Hobbit world. In an instant, at the 0 point where light and darkness intersected. Unlike the previous 2 times, Liang Yue was not directly sent into the trial world, but came to a space that seemed to be in complete stillness. This guy was currently maintaining an awkward posture, floating there in a state of weightlessness. Everything around him seemed to have solidified, and no matter how Liang Yue struggled, he couldn't move even half an inch. His eyes were wide open unconsciously, but he could only see a trace of light and shadow floating in front of him for a very brief moment. At this moment, only his thoughts were free, not bound by the surrounding abnormal environment, trying hard to break through this shackle. But it was so powerless. Detecting that the host possesses a designated identity scroll, which can have a certain impact on this trial in the worlds. Host, do you want to use this scroll, designated identity scroll? I see. But this scroll, can it allow me to completely decide my identity in that world? Although Liang Yue was maintaining a static posture at this time, his thoughts were unusually active, and in just an instant, he thought of many things. The designated identity scroll can, to a certain extent, allow the host to decide their identity in that world, but the identity selected by the host cannot be a major character who drives the plot development of that plane, nor can you set your identity as a race other than human. Otherwise, what the host will get will only be identity information as a disguise, and will not have the corresponding bloodline and body as expected. But this is not difficult to understand. If I could really decide any identity, I would directly set myself as Smog or Gandalf, and that would be lively. I decide not to use the identity scroll for now. Ling. Command confirmed. Plane transfer continues. As the system's voice fell, before Liang Yue could make any reaction, the originally blurred scene in front of him became clear in an instant. The originally silent surroundings also suddenly began to become noisy. Immediately afterwards, a piece of unfamiliar information suddenly appeared out of thin air, and various images in private scenes flashed in his mind from time to time. Subsequently, the system's prompt followed closely. Ding. Identity information loaded. System tasks have been issued. Please check in time. Ding. The monthly lottery benefits have been refreshed. Please pay attention to check. Hey. Kid who claims to be from the Eastern world, what's wrong? Didn't you just say you were going to slay a dragon? Now a cup of rum has made you unconscious, better drunk. I think the armor he's wearing is not bad. I guess it should be worth some money. The inner lining is also good. That seems to be the legendary silk hem. This kid looks very tender. His face is delicate and smooth. Could it be a woman disguised as a man? Now that you mention it, here let me test his quality. A thick, calloused hand suddenly reached in front of Liang Yue's drooping hair, the wrinkled skin faintly carrying a fishy stench, as if he hadn't washed his hands for months during the process. This hand paused slightly, seemingly testing or wary of something, but then suddenly split its 5 fingers and grabbed at his hair. However, just as the other party's finger was about to touch him, Liang Yue finally woke up from his daze. Subconsciously reaching out, as fast as lightning, he grabbed the other party's wrist in his hand. No matter how hard the other party tried, they couldn't break free at this time. Liang Yue slowly raised his head, and curiously looked around through the hair in front of his forehead. At this time, the place where he was should be a bar, typical Western medieval tavern design, at least very similar to the scenes in the film and television works that this guy had seen before. The tavern was dimly lit, the facilities were old, and the sound was noisy, with rude curses and laughter filling the surroundings. The air faintly exuded a sour smell mixed with alcohol. Most of the people at the tables were men with dark clothes, messy hair, and ferocious faces, holding wine glasses in their hands, drinking heartily, but also placing their respective weapons beside them, or axes, or long swords and daggers. Of course, these were just the most ordinary goods in the tavern. Those characters who really couldn't be provoked usually sat in the most inconspicuous corner positions, or in dimly lit places wearing black and gray cloaks, completely sinking their eyes into the shadows, giving people a sense of mystery. But the gleam that occasionally flashed in their pupils, and the fine armor that was inadvertently exposed through the wide corners of their clothes, reflecting the metallic luster under the dim light, or a delicate pattern and emblem revealed on the sleeves, could not be underestimated just right to show the surrounding masses their uniqueness. These common routines in European and American film and television dramas were now displayed in front of Liang Yue's eyes one by one. Of course, in comparison, Liang Yue seemed to be the most conspicuous one in this tavern at this time. He was also wearing a wide black cloak. Inside was a silver half-body breastplate, inlaid with delicate patterns, and the lower half of his body also had delicate sheen guards protecting his legs and knees. The rest of the joint parts were wrapped in soft and tough leather, which fit the body very well, but did not restrict his movements. In addition, inside this armor and leather, there was also a flamboyant big red loose robe, with a cloak of the same texture hanging behind him. However, The material was not the silk in the mouths of those people with no eyesight. Through his own personal experience, Liang Yue felt that the texture of this robe was very soft. And it was also very friendly to the skin, but it did not have the obvious smooth touch of silk products. Based on his past experience in wearing clothes, this should be a blend, coupled with his jet black, shiny, and faintly sandalwood-scented half-length hair, and that face that was obviously much wider and more handsome than the surrounding people. Frankly speaking, with Liang Yue's current cosplay style appearance, it's no wonder people would come looking for trouble. Isn't this obviously a fat sheep? Don't you understand the principle of not revealing your wealth? Once you can successfully take this guy down, the value of this outfit alone is enough for people to eat idle rice for 3 to 5 years. Chapter 124 Gandalf. With a casual flick, the man, originally seized by Liang Yue at the wrist, was immediately staggered and pushed away. However, the man didn't seem to appreciate the gesture and didn't realize Liang Yue was showing mercy. After he steadied himself, he turned around, and a gleaming dagger suddenly came towards him. This man was clearly an expert. His rough face was filled with ferocity. Not only were his moves swift, but the angle of the dagger was also extremely tricky, aimed straight at Liang Yue's throat. Judging by this, he had no intention of letting Liang Yue live. Seeing this, Liang Yue narrowed his eyes, and a hint of coldness flashed within them. With a subtle grasping motion, he once again lightly touched the other party's wrist, but this time, he didn't hold back. His sturdy arm shook violently, and a force instantly transmitted from Liang Yue's hand to the other party's arm. Immediately afterward, Liang Yue raised his foot and kicked the other party directly in the hip crack. A crisp sound of bone breaking one of the man's legs was instantly detached from the root of his thigh. A shrill scream echoed throughout the small tavern. The sound didn't seem human, and coupled with the man's miserable end, it made everyone around feel their scalps tingle, and they all retreated. Kill this kid for me. His armor and sword, sell them and split the money. A low, tense voice suddenly rang out from the crowd. Soon, 4 men wearing dirty, gray robes made of indistinguishable material, looking disheveled, cautiously stepped forward, their faces filled with tension and a hint of greed, each holding an axe or hammer. From the mottled traces on the metal surfaces of their weapons, Liang Yue could easily tell that they were probably used to doing some chopping and hammering. No doubt, these should be a few mercenaries who lick blood from their blades, right? This thought flashed through his mind. Then Liang Yue didn't say any nonsense, and directly walked towards the 4 men opposite him. Neither hurried nor slow. Once the other party entered his attack range, he immediately drew the long sword from his waist, which was a palm's width. Shing! A flash of cold light, and a crescent-shaped arc of light instantly slashed through the 4 people in front of him and the weapons in their hands. In just an instant, they, along with their weapons, were cut into 2 pieces with one strike. OWW. Ugga. For a time, blood splattered, the smell of blood permeated the air, and the scream seemed to fill the entire tavern. Liang Yue then flicked the blade in his hand, and the blood beads on the long sword immediately flew towards the pitted ground. After putting the unwieldy sword back into its scabbard, he walked towards the entrance of the tavern, and everyone watching immediately retreated as he passed. At night, sir, you haven't paid yet. Just then, a slightly trembling voice came from behind the bar, and it was a female voice. Hearing this, Liang Yue stopped, and subconsciously reached for his waist, but he didn't find anything. The armor and sword were prepared for me. But they didn't think to prepare a money bag. After secretly complaining, Liang Yue then flipped his sleeve and directly took out a gold ingot from his storage space, and then threw it behind him. Hiss, accompanied by the almost uniform sound of everyone gasping. The large piece of gold drew a beautiful arc in the air under their gaze. Then, with a duong sound, it slammed onto the bar. The bottles and jars on the side were shaken and jumped from the table behind the bar. An old man with only one eye at this time forcefully pushed away the woman who had just spoken, and then lifted the gold ingot with some effort. His eyes glowing with excitement. With a look of enjoyment, he leaned close to the gold and smelled it, and then the old man opened his mouth and bit hard on it with his few remaining black teeth. Several teeth marks then appeared on the surface of the gold. This quality, really good. He knight, sir, rest assured, I will be responsible for cleaning up these dregs for you. Hey, by the way, do you need me to pack some dry food for you to use on the road? Listening to the old man's worldly and slick tone, Liang Yue just waved his hand behind his back, and then, with a full sense of superiority, pushed the door and left without looking back. Who knew? Just as this guy stepped out the door, in the rainy night, a tall, white-haired, kind old man walked towards him. The old man was wearing an old gray robe, a wide-brimmed, curved horn-pointed hat of the same color on his head, and a wooden staff about his height in his hand. From the other party, Liang Yue felt a strange and mysterious aura. Gandalf, The moment he saw the old man, he almost immediately judged the other party's identity. There was no way around it to ask the other party to look so much like Magneto's actor, Ian McKellen. However, having just arrived, Liang Yue didn't take the initiative to strike up a friendship with the other party at this time, but after nodding to each other, he put on his hood and slowly disappeared into the rainy night. A moment later, Liang Yue left the small town under the wind and rain, built a stone house on the roadside grass, and then built a lava stove in the house, just sitting on the rocky ground like this, roasting a small pile of peanuts, cashews, hazelnuts and other nuts. He couldn't wait to start what he was most interested in. System, I want to draw a lottery. As soon as this guy's voice fell, the familiar black background, red needle roulette wheel immediately popped up in front of him, and various dazzling commodities were placed around the outermost edge of the roulette wheel. However, Liang Yue didn't even look at it at this time, and directly ordered the system start. Stop. Ling. Congratulations, host, in this lottery welfare, you have won the life skill Erhu specialization, and as it in wood Erhu gift made with the most top-notch craftsmanship. Bullshit. After exhaling a mouthful of fragrant air, Liang Yue's eyes twitched immediately. Pursing his mouth, and flipping his sleeve, he took out the Erhu instrument from the storage space forcibly, and during the urge to throw this thing directly into the lava stove in front of him, he then pulled out the attribute panel of this skill with a stinky face. Erhu specialization level 110, current level 1, conventional musical instrument performance skill, containing thousands of songs, recording the life, death, and separation of the world. Skill effect, calming the mind, calming the key, nourishing the spirit energy. +5 proficiency. 0-100. Chapter 125. System tasks. No way, even a specialized skill in musical instruments is this powerful. With a skill, it's almost like having a niche secondary profession, right? Peace of mind, tranquility, nourishing the spirit, and even adding to the spirit attribute. This is just at the lowest level. There should be new attributes emerging later, right? Could it be that practicing musical instruments and music can really cultivate one's sentiments? Lowering his head to look at the Erhu in his hand, Liang Yue felt a sense of bewilderment and shock in his heart. He unconsciously caressed the body and strings of the instrument, unable to recover for a long time. Speaking of which, ever since he was reincarnated into this Marvel world, when he was young and inexperienced, he also put in a lot of effort to find someone to learn the classical Chinese musical instrument performance. In order to have more talent when he grew up, it's good to be prepared. However, relatively speaking, this fellow rarely had contact with instruments like the Erhu. The reason for this is probably related to the environment in which Liang Yue lived in his previous life. Specifically, it was related to a somewhat special group of people. To be more precise, it was those who roamed the streets selling their skills, or those who begged for money on the streets. Their survival methods were not all the same. Most of them abandoned their personal dignity, knelt directly on the ground, and then placed a bowl in front of them, crying and begging passers-by for alms. This is the least technical method among this group of people, purely selling misery, without any threshold. Those who are slightly more advanced are those who know the art of makeup and disguise, knowing how to install a prosthetic limb on their body, or curl up their legs, pretending to be disabled. Then, they use a wooden board with 2 wheels installed underneath, wiping the ground forward while holding a bowl to ask passers-by for alms. In fact, anyone with a little life experience knows that real disabled people don't look like this at all. Finally, the most advanced among this group of people are the beggars who possess certain talents, among whom those who play musical instruments account for the majority, and among those who play musical instruments, those who play the Erhu account for the majority, and the rest are those who play the guitar. Therefore, as long as Liang Yue saw an instrument like the Erhu when he was a child, he would unconsciously think of the group of people sitting on the street with a small broken bowl in front of them. This is purely talking about the scam members of the modern beggar gang, absolutely not intended to ridicule or satirize real instrumentalists and music performers. As a result, under this circumstance, although the art of Erhu occupies a very high position in the field of musical instruments, Liang Yue subconsciously excluded this classical musical instrument from his wishes when he was studying. He never expected that now this Erhu would be bound to him in this way. Oh my Erhu, why is it the Erhu? Not to mention the Gukin, Guzheng, etc. To take a step back, if the system gave me a flute or zio, then this matter would be perfect. In the future, if I practice this instrumental music to the highest level, and then combine it with a martial art of instrumental music, I've only heard of people calling it 7-string invisible sword, blue sea tide song, or 6-fingered kin demon or something, but have you ever seen anyone playing the Erhu who can pull out sword energy or mental attacks? Hey, by the way, System, didn't you say that this Erhu specialization contains thousands of songs? And those Erhu application skills, why haven't I seen them? Just as Liang Yue looked at the Erhu in his hand, feeling a little apprehensive, and then put it back into the storage space, a violent stream of information suddenly appeared out of thin air, rushing towards this fellow's head in a tough posture buzz. Its momentum was like a roaring wave, wave after wave, continuously, to the extent that even Liang Yue, relying on his physical fitness far superior to ordinary people, was a little unable to resist. After only resisting for a second or two, this fellow hugged his head with his eyes rolling back, smashed his head on the stone pier in front of him. Humming and groaning in pain, it took a full half an hour for this uncomfortable feeling that seemed to burst his head to recede quickly like a tide. That's not right, system. Why are these songs that you just transmitted all adapted from the songs I heard in my previous life? Like Asking Love, Twilight and those European and American songs, aren't they all adapted from popular songs in the previous life? You're being too perfunctory, Ling. The host's current skill level is too low to have the strength to play formal songs. Please be patient and improve your playing skills. More songs will be released later. More songs? There are more. Main quest, hunting evil. Quest requirements, hunt down the evil leaders in this world by any means. The quest deadline is half a year, and the last evil dragon Smog in Middle-earth is on the must-kill list. Quest rewards: 3,000 points, 1 extra lottery chance. After completing the must-kill target, each additional leader-level evil leader hunted will affect the quest rewards. Side quest, the imbalance of orcs. Quest requirements, the intervention of evil forces has caused the orc population to expand rapidly. The emergence of a large number of abnormally bred races has led to the expansion of the ambition of this species. Appropriately reducing their numbers can ensure the balance between the races in Middle-earth. It is required to hunt down at least 5,000 invading orc soldiers. Quest rewards: 500 points. For each additional orc soldier killed, you will receive 1 additional point reward. Side quest, protecting innocents. Quest requirements, ensure the personal safety of Bilbo Baggins, the protagonist of the Middle-earth stage, until the host leaves this trial world. Quest rewards: a 10,000 World's Warrior weapon jar. This time there are 3 quests: A2 hunting natured propositions. The targets are dragons and orcs respectively. Dragon. That seems to be just a low-level western dragon, maybe not even as good as the ordinary dragons in the novel. Probably the same level as the 3 dragons in Ice and Fire as for the other leader-level monsters. This needs to be carefully planned. As for reducing the number of orc troops, this quest is interesting. After the number of 5,000, all heads are calculated as 1 point. Is this encouraging me to hunt orcs? Speaking of which, could it be that the system and this race have some disagreements? Protecting the hobbit Bilbo Baggins, the best way is to let him stay in the hobbit's hometown and not come out. But I didn't choose that person either. Gandalf, that guy, doesn't know if he's been to the hobbit's paradise yet. Thinking of this, Liang Yue couldn't help but scratch his head. According to this fellow's idea, it's actually very simple to prevent Bilbo from adventuring with the dwarves. Just secretly go to his tower and break his legs, and there's nothing to worry about. Gandalf can't find a fractured and injured burglar to play dragon slaying with the dwarves, and he can't pull an injured hobbit on this already dangerous journey. But the problem is that Liang Yue is new here. He doesn't know the place at all. He doesn't even know the way, let alone go to the hobbit's secluded hometown. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.